Story 1. The Blind Spot. I watched myself disappear into that corner 3 times before I understood I'd already been gone for weeks. The Transit Authority hired me in 2019 to monitor the Green Line's northwestern hub, a position requiring patience, attention to detail, and the ability to sit in manufactured silence for 8 hours without losing focus. The control room occupied a converted maintenance office on the mezzanine level, outfitted with 16 monitors arranged in a horseshoe configuration. Each screen cycled through feeds from 47 cameras positioned throughout the station. Platform 7 appeared on monitor 4, cycling every 45 seconds between 3 fixed angles. The blind spot revealed itself during a routine overnight review on March 12th. A commuter in a gray coat entered the southeastern corner of Platform 7 at 2:17 a.m., visible for exactly 4 seconds before passing beyond Camera 14's coverage zone. Standard procedure dictated Camera 15 would capture their reappearance near the track edge within 2 seconds. The commuter never emerged. I logged the discrepancy as a potential camera malfunction and continued monitoring. Over the next hour, 3 additional passengers entered the same corner. None reappeared on adjacent feeds. I radioed maintenance at 3:45 a.m. Danny Kowalski arrived 20 minutes later, clipboard in hand, irritation evident in the set of his shoulders. "Cameras are fine," he said after 40 minutes of diagnostics. "Check the angles, the wiring, the recording buffer, everything's operational." "Then where did they go?" I asked, gesturing to the playback I'd cued. Danny watched the footage twice, then shrugged. "Must have turned back. Caught the train from Platform 6 instead." I didn't argue. Danny had maintained these systems for 12 years. If he said the equipment worked, it worked. The blind spot persisted. Over the following week, I documented 37 instances of passengers entering that corner without re-emerging. Some walked slowly, checking their phones. Others moved with purpose, as if late for something important. All vanished with the same casual finality, like actors stepping off stage mid-scene. On March 19th, I began reviewing archived footage, searching for the pattern's origin. The blind spot appeared in recordings dating back 4 months, though initially only 1 or 2 passengers per night entered the affected area. The frequency had increased steadily, geometrically, until now it claimed a dozen commuters each shift. I filed a formal incident report. My supervisor, Patricia Vance, reviewed the documentation with the weary patience of someone who'd processed too many unexplainable anomalies. "The cameras work," she said, echoing Danny's assessment. "Transit records show no missing persons, no complaints from passengers about station layout confusion." "What exactly are you reporting?" "A spatial inconsistency," I said carefully. "Passengers entering an area that shouldn't accommodate them." Patricia's expression suggested she found this explanation unsatisfying but not worth pursuing. "Noted in the daily log. Flag it for quarterly review. Move on." I tried. On March 24th, while reviewing that evening's feed, I saw myself. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., 3 hours and 13 minutes into my shift. Monitor 4 displayed Platform 7's southeastern corner as usual. I appeared at the edge of Camera 14's coverage zone, walking with measured steps, hands in my pockets, gaze fixed ahead. I wore my uniform. My badge caught the fluorescent lighting at the exact angle it always did. I watched myself walk into the blind spot and disappear. I checked my position. I sat in the control room exactly where I'd been for the past 3 hours. My coffee remained half full in its designated cup holder. The timestamp on my terminal read 11:47 p.m. I was in 2 places simultaneously. I rewound the footage. The sequence repeated identically: my approach, my steady gait, my disappearance into that impossible corner. I checked adjacent camera feeds. None showed me leaving the control room or accessing the mezzanine stairs. I called Danny again. He arrived irritated, departing confused after verifying the recording's authenticity through metadata analysis. "It's you," he confirmed. "Same uniform, same badge number visible in frame 47. But you've been logged in the control room all night. System shows no access gaps." "Could it be a loop?" I asked. "Old footage spliced in?" "Metadata's clean. This was recorded tonight, real-time feed." Danny rubbed his face. "Look, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you walked down there and don't remember. Fatigue does weird things." I hadn't left the control room. I was certain. The blind spot began expanding on March 26th. What had occupied perhaps 15 square feet of Platform 7's southeastern corner now consumed nearly a third of the platform's visible area. Cameras 14, 15, and 16 all showed the same impossible geography. Passengers walking into empty space and vanishing, as though passing through a curtain only I could see. I appeared in the footage 4 more times that week. Each instance showed me approaching from different angles, always alone, always moving with calm purpose toward that corner. Each time I vanished completely. I stopped sleeping properly. When I closed my eyes, I saw that corner, the scuffed tiles, the flickering advertisement panel, the precise angle where visibility ended and impossibility began. On April 2nd, I decided to investigate directly. I descended to Platform 7 at 11:43 p.m., approaching from the western stairwell to match the angle from my most recent appearance in the footage. The platform stood empty except for distant maintenance lights and the ever-present hum of ventilation systems. I walked slowly toward the southeastern corner, each step measured and deliberate. The corner looked ordinary. Scuffed tiles, flickering advertisement, nothing remarkable. I reached the boundary where the blind spot began, the exact point where I'd watched myself disappear repeatedly. I extended my hand. My fingers touched solid wall, cool and concrete and undeniably real. I returned to the control room and reviewed the footage from my investigation. Monitor 4 showed me approaching the corner at 11:47 p.m. I watched myself extend my hand, then step forward into the blind spot. I vanished completely as I'd known I would. But I'd felt the wall. I'd touched it. I'm writing this report on April 5th. The blind spot now encompasses half of Platform 7. 43 passengers entered it last night. None emerged. I appear in the footage every evening at 11:47 p.m., walking calmly into that corner, disappearing with the quiet finality of someone who knows exactly where they're going. Tonight is my shift. It's currently 11:34 p.m. The corner is waiting. Some surveillance systems don't just record what happens. They show what's already been decided. And sometimes watching long enough means accepting the footage knows more about your destination than you do. Story 2, the loop feed. The monitors showed me making a mistake I hadn't made yet, and by the time I understood what I was watching, it was already too late to choose differently. I've operated the Central Dispatch surveillance grid for 6 years, long enough to recognize the difference between equipment malfunction and operator error. The former announces itself through pixelation, frozen frames, or complete signal loss. The latter manifests in missed incidents, delayed responses, and disciplinary paperwork. On April 8th, I encountered something that fit neither category. A temporal displacement so subtle I nearly dismissed it as fatigue. The night shift began routinely. I clocked in at 11 p.m., relieving Marcus Brennan with the standard handoff briefing. All systems operational, no outstanding incidents, track maintenance scheduled for Tunnel 4 between 2 and 4 a.m. Marcus looked exhausted, mentioning something about weird playback issues before departing quickly, eager for sleep. I settled into the monitoring routine. scanning feeds in systematic rotation, logging timestamp anomalies, coordinating with platform security through the radio network. Monitors 7 through 12 displayed the main arterial corridor connecting platforms 3 and 5, a high traffic zone requiring continuous observation. At 11:47 p.m., I noticed Monitor 9 displaying footage I'd seen before. The scene showed the arterial corridor during what appeared to be evening rush hour. Dense pedestrian traffic, commuters moving in predictable patterns, the temporal signature of 6:30 p.m. crowd dynamics. But the timestamp overlay read 11:47 p.m., current date. I checked the system diagnostics, no playback mode activated, feed registered as live. I radioed Marcus, catching him before he left the facility. Did you notice Monitor 9 showing old footage? Static. Then, yeah. Kept happening all night. Loops from the previous shift. I logged it for tech review. It's still doing it, I said, watching the impossible rush hour crowd navigate the 11:47 p.m. corridor. Probably buffered data cycling through. Danny'll fix it tomorrow. Marcus signed off. I logged the anomaly and continued monitoring. Over the next hour, monitors 7, 10, and 12 began displaying the same temporal inconsistency, scenes from earlier shifts overlaying current timestamps. The footage quality remained perfect, no degradation or signal corruption. Simply wrong time, wrong context. At 1:15 a.m., I saw myself in Monitor 11. The feed showed the arterial corridor, sparse overnight traffic, timestamp reading 11:52 p.m., 23 minutes before my shift began. I walked through the frame carrying my standard equipment kit, moving toward Platform 5. My gait, my posture, the way I adjusted my radio holster, unmistakably me. I rewound the feed. The sequence repeated identically. Timestamp, 11:52 p.m., location arterial corridor. Subject, me, on patrol, 8 minutes before I'd clocked in. I checked the access logs. My badge first registered at the security entrance at 10:57 p.m. No record showed me accessing the arterial corridor at 11:52 p.m. I'd been in the control room continuously since starting my shift. I called Danny's emergency line. He answered on the 5th ring, voice thick with interrupted sleep. The monitors are showing me in places I haven't been, I explained. Timestamps from before my shift started. You're looking at cached footage, Danny said. System buffers the last 72 hours. Sometimes the timestamps glitch during playback. This is supposed to be live feed, I insisted. Check the input source indicator. Bottom right corner. If it's green, it's live. If it's amber, it's cached. I checked Monitor 11. The indicator glowed solid green. Live feed. Danny went quiet for a moment. I'll come in early tomorrow. For now, just note it in the incident log. Don't rely on those monitors for active surveillance. The loops intensified after 2 hours a.m. Monitors 7 through 12 began showing coordinated sequences, footage of me conducting routine patrols through various station sections, all stamped with times that hadn't occurred yet. At 2:17 a.m., Monitor 8 showed me walking through the lower mezzanine, timestamp reading 3:30 a.m. At 2:34 a.m., Monitor 10 displayed me inspecting Platform 7's security gate, timestamp reading 4:15 a.m. The footage depicted my future movements with uncomfortable specificity. I watched myself complete tasks I hadn't yet undertaken, following patrol routes I hadn't yet chosen. At 2:45 a.m., curiosity overrode protocol. I decided to test the loop's accuracy. Monitor 9 showed me entering the equipment storage room at 3:30 a.m., exactly as previewed. According to the footage, I would spend 4 minutes inside, emerging with a replacement battery pack for my radio. The loop showed me checking the battery's charge level, nodding with apparent satisfaction, then departing. At 3:28 a.m., I left the control room and walked to equipment storage. I entered at 3:30 a.m. precisely, following the path I'd watched myself take. The battery rack stood exactly where the footage indicated. I selected a battery pack, tested its charge level, nodded unconsciously, and departed. I returned to the control room and reviewed Monitor 9's recording of my visit. The footage matched the loop exactly. Same movements, same timing, same unconscious nod. The monitors weren't malfunctioning, they were prescient. At 4:00 a.m., Monitor 11 began displaying a sequence I didn't recognize. The timestamp read 5:47 a.m. The location appeared to be Maintenance Tunnel 6, a restricted area requiring supervisor authorization to access. The footage showed me standing before the tunnel's security door, badge raised to the reader, expression uncertain. I appeared to hesitate, then swiped the badge. The door opened. I entered. The sequence ended there, Monitor 11 cycling to a different camera view. I checked the schedule. Maintenance Tunnel 6 had no work orders for tonight. No authorized access, no reason for patrol. I rewound Monitor 11, watching the sequence 3 times. Each replay showed the same hesitation, the same decision, the same entry into the restricted tunnel. The feed was showing me something I would do in 1 hour and 47 minutes. I began questioning the nature of choice. If the monitors displayed my future actions with perfect accuracy, did I possess genuine agency, or was I simply following a script I'd been shown? The equipment storage test suggested the latter. I'd performed exactly as previewed, down to involuntary gestures. At 5:30 a.m., I sat watching Monitor 11, waiting for the 5:47 a.m. sequence to arrive in real time. The footage remained static, showing the empty corridor outside Maintenance Tunnel 6. At 5:45 a.m., I made a decision. I would not go to Maintenance Tunnel 6. I would not swipe my badge. I would not enter the restricted area. I would remain in the control room, breaking the loop through deliberate inaction. At 5:46 a.m., my radio crackled. Dispatch requesting immediate inspection of Maintenance Tunnel 6. Possible water leak detected by automated sensors. Supervisor authorization granted. Required response. Immediate. I stared at the radio, understanding crystallizing with nauseating clarity. The loop didn't predict my choices. It documented inevitabilities. At 5:47 a.m., I stood before the security door of Maintenance Tunnel 6, badge raised, expression uncertain. I hesitated, then swiped. The door opened. I entered. The tunnel extended 50 yards, descending at a slight angle, lit by emergency lighting strips. Water indeed pooled near the eastern junction, a minor leak from overhead infrastructure. I documented the issue, radioed maintenance, prepared to depart. Then I saw Monitor 11. Someone had installed a display screen inside the tunnel, mounted at eye level, showing a single camera feed. The timestamp read 6:15 a.m. The location was the control room. The footage showed my chair empty, console lights blinking their standard rhythm. I checked my watch. 5:53 a.m. I was looking at my own control room 22 minutes in the future without me in it. I returned to the control room at 6:02 a.m. I reviewed Monitor 11's recording of my tunnel visit. The footage showed me entering, inspecting the leak, then standing motionless for 4 minutes, staring at something off camera. At 6:15 a.m., I clocked out early, citing equipment concerns. Marcus arrived for the morning shift, looking more exhausted than when he'd left. "Loop's still happening?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, "but I think I figured it out." "What's causing it?" I thought about the monitor in the tunnel showing me where I wouldn't be. I thought about the loops showing me where I would. I thought about choice, agency, and the recursive nature of watching yourself be watched. "We are," I said. "Some systems don't malfunction. They simply show you what's already been decided. And once you've seen the footage, you can't help but perform exactly as recorded. The loops don't predict, they prescribe. And somewhere in the infrastructure, something is watching us rehearse." Story 3. The Unassigned Camera. The person waving from camera number 47 wore my face, my uniform, and my badge. And they'd been standing in that impossible corridor for 24 hours before I found the feed. The surveillance grid for the Blue Line's Eastern Terminal operates on a closed-circuit architecture installed during the station's 2014 renovation. 46 cameras provide comprehensive coverage of platforms, corridors, entrances, and mechanical spaces. Each camera possesses a unique identifier documented in the master registry maintained by both physical and digital records. The system's closure ensures security. No unauthorized devices can interface with the network without immediate detection. On April 15th, camera number 47 appeared on my monitoring interface. I noticed it during the standard shift startup routine at 11:30 p.m. The main display panel arranges cameras in a grid formation, 6 rows of 8, totaling 48 visible positions. 46 positions show active feeds. 2 positions display no signal indicators for deprecated cameras removed during the 2019 platform expansion. This configuration had remained constant for 18 months. Tonight, position 47 showed an active feed. The thumbnail displayed a corridor I didn't recognize, narrow, constructed from older architectural materials lit by incandescent bulbs rather than the LED fixtures standard throughout our system. The image quality appeared degraded, suggesting analog conversion or significant signal interference. I expanded camera number 47 to full screen view. The corridor extended approximately 30 feet, terminating at a junction with perpendicular passages. The walls showed exposed brick, inconsistent with modern construction codes. The lighting created harsh shadows, dramatic angles, a theatrical quality absent from our utilitarian infrastructure. No identifying markers visible, no signage indicating location or purpose, and someone stood in the frame. The figure occupied the corridor's midpoint, facing directly toward the camera. They wore a transit authority uniform, specifically a surveillance officer's configuration identical to my own. Dark pants, utility vest, identification badge catching the incandescent light. The distance and image quality obscured facial features, but the posture suggested deliberate positioning and awareness of the camera's gaze. As I watched, the figure raised their right hand and waved. The gesture appeared friendly, almost casual, a simple side-to-side motion, fingers extended, the greeting of someone recognizing an acquaintance. They held the wave for approximately 3 seconds, then lowered their hand and resumed stationary observation. I checked the camera registry. The digital database listed 46 cameras, each with installation date, location code, and maintenance history. No entry for camera number 47. I accessed the physical documentation, blueprint overlays showing exact camera positions updated after each installation or removal. No indication of a 47th device. I called Danny immediately. "We don't have a camera 47, he said after checking his own records. Last assignment was 46, installed January 2019. It's showing live feed on my monitor, I explained. Grid position 47, active signal. Impossible. You can't just add a camera to the network. The system's closed circuit. Even if someone physically installed hardware, it wouldn't interface without configuration. And that requires administrator access with multiple authorizations. I'm looking at it right now, I insisted. Someone's standing in the feed. They're wearing our uniform. Danny went quiet. I'm coming in. He arrived 40 minutes later, laptop in hand, expression transitioning from skepticism to confusion as he examined my monitor. Camera number 47 continued displaying its impossible corridor, the uniformed figure still present, now sitting against the left wall in a posture suggesting patient waiting. Danny connected his laptop to the monitoring system, running diagnostic protocols I didn't fully understand. His fingers moved rapidly across the keyboard, commands scrolling too quickly for me to follow. "It's pulling from the network," he said finally. "Active data stream, clean signal, no interference patterns. But there's no corresponding hardware identifier. The feed exists without a source device. How is that possible?" "It's not." Danny leaned back, staring at the screen. "It's like the system generated the feed spontaneously, or it's been there the whole time, and we're only now seeing it." "The person in the corridor," I said. "Can you enhance the image? Get a better look at their face?" Danny worked for several minutes, applying various filtering and enhancement algorithms. The image quality improved incrementally: sharper edges, better contrast, increased definition. The face became recognizable. "That's you," Danny said quietly. He was correct. The figure in camera number 47 wore my face, not similar, not resembling, but identical. Same facial structure, same complexion, same expression of calm observation. The badge visible on their vest displayed my employee ID number. "When was this footage recorded?" I asked. Danny checked the timestamp overlay. "According to the metadata, this is live feed, current date and time." "I'm sitting here. I've been here all night." "I know." Danny ran additional diagnostics. "But there's another timestamp embedded in the data stream, secondary encoding, almost hidden." He isolated the information. "This feed is dated tomorrow, April 16th, 11:47 p.m., 24 hours and 47 minutes in the future." "That's impossible," I said reflexively. "So is a camera that doesn't exist showing footage of you standing in a corridor not listed in our schematics," Danny replied. "But here we are." We watched camera number 47 for the next 2 hours, documenting every detail. The figure, my double, moved occasionally, checking their watch, adjusting their equipment vest, pacing the corridor's length. They never left the frame. They never acknowledged the camera beyond that initial wave. At 1:15 a.m., Danny attempted to trace the signal's origin. The diagnostic software displayed a network topology map showing data pathways connecting each camera to the central monitoring system. 46 cameras showed logical connections, physical cables running through documented conduit systems. Camera number 47's connection displayed as a simple line extending from the monitoring hub directly into empty space, terminating without source or destination. "It's not coming from anywhere," Danny said. "The feed just exists, like it's always been part of the system, waiting for someone to look at the right grid position." "Can you delete it? Remove it from the interface?" Danny tried. Each deletion attempt failed. System errors, access denials, cryptic messages suggesting the feed was protected by authorization levels that didn't exist in our hierarchy. "It won't let me," he said. "The system treats camera 47 as essential infrastructure. Trying to remove it is like trying to delete camera 1. The architecture won't allow it." At 2 a.m., Danny departed, promising to escalate the issue through administrative channels. I continued monitoring camera number 47 alongside the standard feeds, documenting the double's activities in my incident log. At 3:30 a.m., the double in camera number 47 stood, approached the camera directly, and removed something from their utility vest. They held it up for clear viewing. It was a piece of paper with handwritten text. "Check tunnel access logs." The double maintained position for 30 seconds, ensuring I'd read the message, then returned to their previous location and resumed sitting. I accessed the tunnel maintenance logs, filtering for recent activity. Most entries showed routine inspections and scheduled maintenance. One entry caught my attention. Tunnel 8, unauthorized access detected, April 16th, 11:47 p.m. Tomorrow. The exact timestamp from camera number 47's feed. The access badge number matched my own. I began to understand the topology Danny had shown me, the line extending into empty space. Camera number 47 wasn't recording from nowhere. It was recording from when. The corridor existed temporally displaced 24 hours ahead, showing me where I would be standing tomorrow night. But I hadn't decided to access Tunnel 8 tomorrow. I had no reason to go there. No work orders, no maintenance calls, no security concerns. Unless camera number 47's existence itself created the reason. At 4 a.m., I made a decision. Tomorrow night, I would not access Tunnel 8. I would not enter the corridor shown in camera number 47. I would break the temporal loop through deliberate avoidance, preventing the future the feed displayed. At 5:30 a.m., I received an automated message from administration. Mandatory inspection of Tunnel 8 scheduled for April 16th, 11:30 p.m. assigned to my shift. Reason: unexplained signal interference affecting camera number 47's network connection. Required resolution: immediate. The loop closed with elegant inevitability. April 16th, 11 p.m. I began my shift reviewing camera number 47. The feed showed the same corridor, the same incandescent lighting, the same deliberate staging. The figure, my double, stood in frame, waiting. At 11:30 p.m., I accessed Tunnel 8 as assigned. The tunnel's configuration matched camera number 47's corridor exactly. Exposed brick walls, incandescent lighting, narrow passage terminating at a perpendicular junction. I walked slowly, recognition building with each step. At 11:47 p.m., I reached the corridor's midpoint and looked up. Camera number 47 was mounted above me, lens angled downward, red recording light steady and certain. No installation hardware visible, no conduit carrying signals to the monitoring system. Just the camera, existing independently, watching. I understood then that camera number 47 hadn't appeared on April 15th. It had always been there, recording this corridor, waiting for the system to acknowledge its feed. And I had always been scheduled to stand here on April 16th at 11:47 p.m., completing the circuit. I raised my hand and waved at the lens. A simple, friendly greeting, the gesture of someone recognizing an acquaintance watching from yesterday. On my radio, dispatch confirmed. Camera 47 signal restored. Issue resolved. I returned to the control room at 12:15 a.m. Camera number 47 remained on the monitoring grid, still displaying its corridor. Empty now, waiting for the next assignment. Danny called at 12:30 a.m. "Did you find anything?" "Just a camera," I said, "doing its job. Should I remove it from the system?" I thought about temporal loops, self-fulfilling infrastructure, and the way surveillance systems sometimes record not what is, but what must be. "Leave it," I said. "Something tells me we'll need it again." Some cameras don't record the present. They document inevitabilities, showing you where the system requires you to be. And once you've seen the feed, you can't help but arrive exactly on schedule. The architecture doesn't just watch, it directs. And camera number 47 is always recording tomorrow, waiting patiently for today to catch up. Story 4. The Static Corridor. The static whispered coordinates to a place that hadn't existed in the schematics for 30 years. But when I found the shaft, someone had recently opened it from the inside. Static entered the surveillance feeds gradually, almost organically, like mold spreading through forgotten infrastructure. The first occurrence manifested on April 20th during the overnight shift. A brief distortion affecting camera 23's feed from the northeastern service corridor. The interference lasted 3 seconds, visual snow obscuring the frame before resolving to normal clarity. I logged it as potential signal degradation and continued monitoring. By April 22nd, the static appeared consistently across cameras 21 through 26, all positioned in the station's northeastern quadrant. The interference followed a pattern, manifesting at 2:17 a.m., lasting between 5 and 12 seconds, affecting cameras in sequential order. Danny performed diagnostics, finding no hardware faults or cable damage. Might be electromagnetic interference, he suggested. Something in that section generating radio frequency noise. I'll check the electrical systems. The static intensified nightly. By April 25th, the interference persisted for minutes rather than seconds, cascading across the entire northeastern surveillance grid. The visual distortion carried an unusual quality. Not random noise, but structured patterns, rhythmic fluctuations suggesting intentional modulation. On April 26th, I recorded the audio component of the static. Most visual interference remains silent or produces simple white noise. The northeastern corridor's static carried complex audio, layered frequencies, rhythmic pulsing, and beneath it all, something resembling vocalization. I exported the audio file and applied noise filtering, isolating the vocal elements. Whispers emerged, faint, fragmented, but distinctly linguistic. I enhanced the audio further, slowing playback by 40%. The whispers resolved into numbers. Section 4, level -3, grid reference Echo 7. I consulted the station schematics. Section 4 existed, the northeastern quadrant where static originated. Level -3 corresponded to the deepest maintenance level rarely accessed. Grid reference Echo 7 indicated a specific location within that level's layout. The schematic showed nothing at Echo 7. Empty space. Architectural void. I compared current schematics with archived blueprints from the station's original 1987 construction. The older documents revealed different infrastructure, maintenance shafts and access corridors removed during the 2001 expansion. Echo 7 had housed a vertical shaft connecting level -3 to surface ventilation systems. The shaft had been sealed during renovation, filled with concrete, removed from operational documentation. According to records, it no longer existed. On April 27th, the whispered coordinates repeated hourly. Different voices, same numbers, same destination. Danny couldn't identify the audio source. The sound appeared embedded in the static itself, not transmitted through the camera's microphone. It's like the interference is encoded with information, he said, looking disturbed. But that's not how signal degradation works. Static is random. This is deliberate. At 2:17 a.m. on April 28th, I made a decision. I would investigate Echo 7 directly, locating the sealed shaft and determining if some residual infrastructure remained that could generate electromagnetic interference. I descended to level -3 using the northeastern access stairs, a route I'd traveled perhaps twice in 6 years. The maintenance level remained dimly lit, emergency fixtures providing minimal illumination. Ventilation hummed constantly, the sound of air moving through aging infrastructure. I navigated using the archived blueprint, counting corridor intersections, measuring distances with practiced steps. Echo 7 should be positioned behind the eastern wall of the primary maintenance corridor, approximately 30 feet from the stairwell. I found it exactly where the blueprint indicated. The shaft entrance stood open, not sealed, not filled with concrete. Open, accessible, descending into darkness beyond my flashlight's range. The entrance was framed with original 1987 construction materials untouched by renovation, as though the sealing had never occurred. Fresh marks scored the floor near the entrance, scuff patterns suggesting recent traffic. I radioed dispatch. I'm at level -3, Echo 7. The sealed maintenance shaft is open, requesting backup before investigation. Static consumed my radio transmission. The whispers intensified, now audible without electronic mediation, emerging from the shaft with unsettling clarity. Section 4, level -3, grid reference Echo 7. My own coordinates, spoken back to me. I should have waited for backup. I should have followed protocol, ascending to the control room and documenting the situation through proper channels. I should have recognized the obvious danger of an unsealed shaft whispering its own location through surveillance static. I entered anyway. The shaft descended vertically for approximately 20 feet before transitioning to a horizontal passage. My flashlight revealed infrastructure inconsistent with the station's construction, older materials, different architectural style, methodology predating the 1987 original construction. The walls were covered in cameras, dozens of them mounted at irregular intervals, lenses pointing inward toward the passage itself. Not modern surveillance equipment, analog devices decades old, some models I recognized from equipment catalogs dating to the 1960s. All showed red recording lights, all active, filming the empty corridor. I understood then why the static whispered coordinates. It was showing me the source, not electromagnetic interference, surveillance saturation. Too many cameras in too small a space, signals overlapping, creating cascading interference across the entire grid. I walked deeper. The passage extended perhaps 50 feet, terminating at a small chamber. More cameras lined the chamber's walls, hundreds of lenses creating a spherical array, every angle covered, every perspective documented. In the chamber's center stood a chair. It faced no particular direction, positioned for optimal visibility from all cameras simultaneously. Leather straps attached to the armrests and legs. A monitoring system sat beside it, ancient equipment, vacuum tubes visible through an open panel, somehow still operational. The monitor displayed my surveillance feeds from the control room, all 46 cameras arranged in the familiar grid pattern, updated in real time. Someone had been watching me watch them. The straps on the chair showed recent wear. The monitoring system's controls were warm to the touch, recently operated. Someone had been here, perhaps only minutes before my arrival, observing my surveillance operation from this forgotten chamber. I turned to leave and saw the cameras adjusting, all of them simultaneously tracking my movement. Not mechanically, no motors engaged, no servos whirred. They simply followed, lenses maintaining focus as I moved toward the exit. The monitor beside the chair changed. My surveillance feeds disappeared, replaced by a single image. Myself, viewed from multiple angles. A composite of every camera in the chamber. Beneath the image, text appeared. "Now you understand what watches back." I ran. The shaft seemed longer ascending, the horizontal passage stretching impossibly, cameras tracking my retreat with patient certainty. I emerged at Echo 7, breathless, disoriented, immediately radioing dispatch with proper protocol. Security sealed the shaft 2 hours later. Danny supervised the installation of a steel plate welded across the entrance, 18 inches thick, supposedly permanent. The static disappeared from the surveillance feeds. On April 30th, I reviewed footage from the northeastern corridor cameras, checking timestamps from my investigation. Cameras 21 through 26 showed me descending to level -3, approaching the sealed shaft. The footage showed me stopping, staring at the solid wall where Echo 7 should be, then returning to the control room. No open shaft, no entry. No chamber full of watching cameras, but I found concrete dust on my uniform, and my flashlight's battery was depleted, consistent with 50 minutes of operation. Some corridors generate their own static, not interference, but accumulated observation pressure. The weight of too many lenses watching too long. And sometimes when you follow the coordinates the static whispers, you discover surveillance isn't a one-way mirror. Something is watching back, cataloging every observer, building its own archive of those who think they're in control. The shaft is sealed now, but the cameras are still recording, still following movement through walls and concrete, waiting patiently for the next investigator to decode their coordinates. Story The operator's shadow. My reflection stopped following me on the 5th night, and by the 7th, it had started showing me what I'd look like if I never left this room. The central control room occupies a glass-walled office on the station's mezzanine level designed for visibility and oversight. 3 walls are solid concrete housing monitoring equipment and communication systems. The 4th wall is floor-to-ceiling glass, overlooking the main terminal concourse. The glass serves dual purpose, allowing supervisors to observe control room operations while giving surveillance officers visual access to the station's primary public space. I've worked in this room since 2018, long enough that I rarely notice the glass wall consciously. It's simply part of the environment, like the ventilation hum or the monitor's perpetual glow. On May 1st, I noticed my reflection was lagging. The observation came during a routine patrol around the control room's perimeter at 1:30 a.m. I walked past the glass wall and my reflection followed with a delay of approximately 1 second. Not significant, perhaps a quirk of the lighting's refresh rate, or fatigue affecting my perception. I paused, raising my hand. My reflection raised its hand 1 second later. I lowered my hand. The reflection lowered its hand, delayed. I mentioned it to Danny during his morning equipment check. He examined the glass, checking for optical distortions or coating deterioration. "Glass is fine," he said, "probably just tired. Night shift does weird things to perception." I accepted his explanation and dismissed the observation. The lag persisted. Over the following week, I periodically tested the phenomenon. Each time I passed the glass wall, my reflection followed 1 second behind. The delay remained constant, neither increasing nor decreasing, simply present, a temporal gap between action and reflection. On May 8th, the reflection deviated from my movements. I was conducting a standard stretching routine at 2:15 a.m., alleviating the stiffness from prolonged sitting. I raised both arms above my head, a simple overhead reach. My reflection raised its arms 1 second later, as expected. Then, as I lowered my arms, the reflection maintained the raised position for an additional 3 seconds before finally lowering. I repeated the movement. This time, my reflection raised its arms, then stretched further, arching its back in a motion I hadn't performed. I stood perfectly still. My reflection continued moving, rolling its shoulders, turning its head, adjusting its posture, as though conducting its own independent stretching routine. I stepped closer to the glass, examining the reflection's face. It wore my expression, my features, my uniform. But subtle differences emerged upon careful observation. The reflection looked more tired, deeper shadows beneath the eyes, more pronounced lines around the mouth, a general exhaustion that surpassed my own fatigue. The reflection smiled at me. I hadn't smiled. I contacted Patricia Vance immediately, requesting an optical assessment of the control room glass. She arrived the following afternoon, accompanied by a facilities consultant who examined the glass wall with various instruments. "No distortions detected," the consultant reported. "Optical quality within normal parameters. No coatings deteriorating. No structural issues affecting reflectivity." "The reflection doesn't match my movements," I explained. Patricia looked at me with carefully neutral concern. "Have you been sleeping adequately? Night shift can cause perceptual disturbances if you're not maintaining proper rest cycles." "I'm sleeping fine." "Take tomorrow night off," she suggested. "I'll have Marcus cover your shift. Rest, reset, come back fresh." I took the night off. Marcus worked the shift without incident. I returned on May 11th. The reflection resumed its deviation immediately. At 11:45 p.m., I walked past the glass wall. My reflection walked past 1 second later, but continued walking after I'd stopped, pacing the length of the window before returning to match my position. At 1:20 a.m., I reviewed footage at my workstation. My reflection stood at the glass, looking out at the concourse, though I remained seated at the monitoring console. At 2:30 a.m., I turned to check the glass wall directly. My reflection was gone. The glass showed only the control room's interior, equipment, monitors, my empty chair, without showing me at all. I stood at the glass, waving my arms, jumping, moving erratically. The reflection did not appear. The glass showed everything except me. Then slowly the reflection faded into view. It stood in the same location I occupied, but facing away, looking toward the monitoring console. I turned to follow its gaze. My chair sat empty. I turned back to the glass. The reflection now sat at the console, hands moving across keyboards I wasn't touching, reviewing feeds I wasn't accessing. I approached the monitoring console and sat down, occupying the same space my reflection inhabited. The glass showed both of us, me sitting at the console, my reflection also sitting at the console, occupying the exact same position, overlapping impossibly. The reflection turned its head toward me, though I faced forward. It mouthed words I couldn't hear through the glass. I'm reading the lips carefully. How long do you think you've been here? I checked my watch. 2:47 a.m. Shift began at 11 p.m. 3 hours, 47 minutes elapsed. I checked the console timestamp, 6:23 a.m. 7 hours, 23 minutes elapsed according to the monitoring system. I radioed dispatch. Confirming current time. 06:23 hours, dispatch responded. My watch still read 2:47 a.m. The time hadn't advanced during my investigation of the reflection. I looked back at the glass. The reflection smiled, a tired, knowing expression, and mouthed more words. You stopped leaving at 11:45 p.m. You've been reviewing footage for 6 hours. I checked my activity logs. The system showed continuous monitoring activity since 11:45 p.m. Feed reviews, incident logs, camera adjustments, none of which I remembered performing. I stood and walked to the glass, pressing my palm against its cool surface. My reflection pressed its palm to the opposite side. Through the glass I felt warmth, as though the reflection generated heat independently. Who are you? I asked aloud. The reflection pointed at the monitoring console, directing my attention to a specific screen. I turned. Monitor 8 displayed the control room from an exterior camera positioned in the concourse, showing the glass wall from outside. 2 figures were visible inside the control room. One sat at the console, working steadily, hands moving across keyboards, reviewing feeds with mechanical precision. The other stood at the glass wall, pressing a palm to its surface, facing outward. The figure at the console was me, wearing my uniform, my badge, my expression. The figure at the glass wall was also me, wearing the same uniform but older. Years older, perhaps decades, aged beyond recognition, yet still identifiably me. I looked at the glass. My reflection looked back. The aged version, tired, worn by endless shifts, trapped in performative monitoring. You're relieved, the reflection mouthed. I'll continue the shift. I turned back to monitor 8. The aged figure at the glass began walking toward the console. The figure at the console, me, younger, current, stood and walked toward the glass. I was watching us trade places. On the monitor, the younger figure reached the glass and pressed against it, looking outward. The aged figure sat at the console and resumed monitoring. I looked down at my hands. They appeared older, skin looser, veins more prominent, fingers slightly crooked from repetitive motion. I approached the nearest reflective surface, a darkened monitor screen. The face looking back was mine, but aged 15 years. I returned to the glass wall. My younger reflection sat at the console, working efficiently, conducting the monitoring routine with practiced precision. I pressed my palm to the glass, He didn't look up. He was too busy watching the feeds, tracking movement, logging incidents, performing the endless task of surveillance. I understood then that the lag wasn't temporal delay. It was transition. The reflection showing moments behind because those moments belong to someone else's shift, someone else's timeline, someone else's increasingly long service in this room. I've been standing at this glass wall since May 11th, watching my younger self work the console, reviewing feeds, conducting surveillance with the dedication I once possessed. He doesn't notice me. He's too focused on the monitors, too committed to the routine. Sometimes he walks past the glass and I wave. He never waves back. He just continues patrolling, stretching, maintaining the system. Danny visited yesterday, or what I perceive as yesterday. Time moves strangely when you're the reflection. He examined the glass again, checking for distortions. He didn't see me, though I stood directly in his line of sight. "Glass is fine," he told my younger self. "No issues detected." My younger self accepted this and continued working. I've tried communicating, pressing messages against the glass, mouthing warnings. He doesn't respond. Perhaps he can't see me yet. Perhaps I'm still 1 second behind, waiting for him to notice the lag, to investigate the deviation, to discover the transition. Some reflections aren't illusions, they're relief workers, showing you the version of yourself that will eventually stand at the glass while you continue monitoring. The control room requires continuous operation, endless surveillance, perpetual observation. Someone must always watch the feeds. And when you grow too tired, when the shifts blur together, when you can't remember leaving, your reflection takes over the console and you become the lag, standing at the glass, watching yourself work, waiting patiently for the next operator to notice their reflection is 1 second behind. The transition is so gradual you don't realize you've already been relieved. You're just watching now. And someone younger is doing the work you used to do. And eventually they'll join you at the glass while someone even younger takes the console. The room requires watchers, and the glass always needs someone on the other side. Story 6. The Passenger Who Stayed. The passenger smiled wider with each playback, and by the 14th review his smile had split his face from ear to ear, but he was still smiling. End-of-line procedures require systematic verification of train interiors after final station arrival. The process ensures no passengers remain aboard, no personal belongings are left behind, and no safety hazards exist before the train enters overnight maintenance rotation. Camera surveillance provides the primary verification method, with physical security sweeps serving as secondary confirmation. On May 14th, the 1:47 a.m. arrival from the northern terminal flagged an anomaly during automated review. I monitor the Yellow Line's southern hub, which serves as the end-of-line terminus for late-night service. The 1:47 a.m. train typically carries fewer than a dozen passengers, most disembarking efficiently before the train transitions to the maintenance yard. Automated systems scan for movement within train cars after all doors close, flagging any residual activity for operator review. At 1:52 a.m., Monitor 14 displayed an alert. Motion detected, Car 7. I expanded the feed. Camera 7 interior showed the train car's central aisle from an elevated angle, capturing approximately 80% of the available seating. The car appeared empty at first glance, no passengers visible in the primary viewing area. Then I noticed the figure at the car's far end. A man sat in the last seat, window side, facing forward. He wore a dark coat and light-colored shirt positioned in the seat with careful precision. Back straight, hands folded in lap, head oriented directly forward. The camera angle captured only his profile and the back of his head, insufficient for facial identification. I radioed security. "We have a passenger remaining in Car 7. Can you verify?" "Conducting sweep now," security responded. I watched Monitor 14 as two security officers entered Car 7 from the front entrance, walking the aisle methodically, checking seats and overhead compartments. The camera captured their entire sweep. The last seat, where the passenger sat, appeared empty as the officers passed it. Car 7 clear, security reported. No passengers. Check the last row, I insisted. Window seat, facing forward. The officers returned to the last row, examining the seat specifically. One officer even sat in it, testing the cushion. Definitely empty. Nothing here. I reviewed the footage again. The passenger remained visible, sitting in that seat, motionless, precisely positioned. I'm seeing someone on camera, I said. Dark coat, light shirt, last seat by the window. We're looking right at it, security said. Nobody here. I captured a still frame from Monitor 14 and transmitted it to security's mobile terminals. Are you seeing this image? Pause. Image shows an empty seat. I looked at Monitor 14. The passenger sat clearly visible. I looked at the still frame I'd captured. Empty seat. The train departed for the maintenance yard at 2:03 a.m. I filed an incident report documenting the discrepancy, classifying it as potential camera malfunction or image retention from previous passengers. At 2:15 a.m., I reviewed the footage again for documentation purposes. The passenger had moved. In the previous viewing, he faced forward, profile visible, head oriented toward the front of the car. Now he sat turned slightly toward the aisle as though preparing to stand. The position change was subtle, perhaps 15 degrees of rotation, but definitive. I rewound the footage to the original timestamp. The passenger sat facing forward exactly as I'd first observed. I played the footage forward in real time. The passenger never moved. He maintained the forward-facing position throughout the entire recorded sequence. I jumped to the 2:15 a.m. review timestamp. The passenger now sat turned slightly toward the aisle. The footage was changing between viewings. I documented the phenomenon carefully, capturing still frames at 1-minute intervals across the full recording. First viewing, passenger facing forward. Second viewing, passenger turned 15 degrees. Third viewing, passenger turned 30 degrees, now nearly profile to the camera. By the fourth viewing, the passenger faced the camera directly. I could see his face now. Middle-aged, unremarkable features, neutral expression. He looked directly into the lens with calm, patient focus. His eyes appeared dark, perhaps brown or black, catching minimal light from the car's interior fixtures. By the fifth viewing, he was smiling, not broadly, just a slight upturn of the lips, the expression of someone recognizing an acquaintance. The smile appeared friendly, almost warm, incongruous with the situation's strangeness. I called Danny at 2:47 a.m. The footage from Car 7 is changing. The passenger is moving between playbacks. Footage doesn't change, Danny said, patient but tired. It's recorded data, static information. I'm watching it happen. Each time I review the recording, he's in a different position. He's looking at the camera now. Send me the file. I'll examine the metadata, check for corruption. I transmitted the footage file to Danny's system. While he analyzed it, I reviewed the recording again. Sixth viewing. The passenger's smile had widened, now showing teeth. Still within normal parameters, but more pronounced, the expression of someone finding something amusing. Danny called back. Metadata looks clean. No corruption indicators, no edit markers, no anomalous encoding. But, what? The file size keeps changing. Every few seconds it increases by small increments, like data is being added to the recording continuously. Seventh viewing. The smile had widened further, extending beyond natural proportions. The corners of his mouth reached toward his ears, the grin too large, anatomically impossible yet clearly visible in the frame. He's still changing, I said. The smile is too wide. Delete the file, Danny suggested. Remove it from the system. If it's corrupted, it might be affecting other recordings. I attempted deletion. The system denied the request. Access error, authorization failure, cryptic message about protected historical data. 8th viewing. The smile had split the passenger's face horizontally, a wound-like opening extending completely from ear to ear. Teeth visible throughout. More teeth than a human mouth should contain, arranged in multiple rows. His eyes remained fixed on the camera, unblinking, expression ecstatic. "I can't delete it," I said. "The system won't allow removal." "I'm coming in," Danny said. 9th viewing. The passenger's smile had begun consuming his face. The opening extended vertically now, crawling toward his eyes and chin as though his entire head was opening like a flower, petals of flesh peeling back to reveal something beneath. I stopped watching. I closed the file, minimized the window, turned my attention to other monitors. I would wait for Danny to arrive and examine the footage with fresh perspective. At 3:15 a.m., Danny arrived and immediately requested access to the Car 7 footage. I opened the file reluctantly. 10th viewing, the passenger's transformation had completed. His head had opened entirely, folded back into an arrangement of flesh and bone that suggested architecture more than anatomy. At the center, where his face should be, something else looked out. Too many eyes, wrong configuration, focused intently on the camera. Danny stared. "That's not possible. It changes every time I watch it," I explained. "Play it again." 11th viewing. The passenger, or what had been the passenger, stood now, approaching the camera with deliberate steps. Each frame brought him closer, his impossible anatomy becoming more detailed, more intricate. He moved with purpose, as though crossing the distance between camera and viewer. "He's coming toward the lens," Danny said quietly. 12th viewing. The passenger filled the frame completely, his reorganized face pressed against the camera. Eyes, so many eyes, looking directly at us. The smile remained visible within the configuration, still widening, still expressing that inexplicable joy. "Stop watching," Danny said. "Each viewing advances him. You're progressing the footage by reviewing it." I closed the file. We sat in silence for several minutes, neither of us speaking, both of us staring at the blank monitor where Car 7's footage had played. "Did you see me in the footage?" I asked finally. "What do you mean?" "In the recording. Was I visible? Sitting at the console, watching the feed?" Danny's expression changed. "No. Why would you be? The camera's in the train car. Look at the playback again. Frame 347. Danny opened the file reluctantly. 13th viewing. The passenger returned to his original position, sitting in the last seat facing forward, wearing his dark coat and light shirt, positioned with careful precision. Danny advanced to frame 347. The image showed the train car's interior from the elevated camera angle, but reflected in the window beside the passenger, barely visible, a figure sat at a monitoring console. "That's you," Danny confirmed. "But it shouldn't be visible. The camera is internal to the car. It can't capture reflections of the control room." "He's showing us he can see us," I said. "He's not trapped in the footage. He's using it to look out." 14th viewing. The passenger turned slowly toward the camera, that impossible smile beginning to form again, the width increasing, the anatomy preparing to reorganize. But this time he raised his hand and pointed, not at the camera but beside it, off-frame, toward something outside the recording's boundary. Danny and I turned simultaneously to look at monitor 14, which displayed the live feed from the maintenance yard. Car 7 sat on the storage track, empty and dark. The interior camera showed the same elevated view as the recording, central aisle, seating rows, last seat by the window. The passenger sat there in the live feed, facing forward, wearing his dark coat and light shirt, He turned slowly toward the camera and smiled. "That's not a recording," Danny said. "That's happening now." I checked the train's status. Car 7 remained in the maintenance yard, powered down, no interior lighting active except emergency fixtures. Security had swept it and confirmed it was empty. Yet the passenger sat there, visible on camera, beginning to smile that anatomically impossible smile. My phone rang. Security. "We're getting an alert from Car 7. Motion detected inside." "Don't go in there," I said immediately. "Someone might be trapped inside. We have to check." "Don't!" The call disconnected. Monitor 14 showed security approaching Car 7 from the maintenance yard access path. 2 officers, flashlights active, standard procedure. They reached the car's exterior door and worked the manual override. The passenger inside turned to watch them, smile widening, head beginning its impossible reorganization. The officers opened the door and entered the car. Monitor 14's feed continued. The officers walked the aisle, flashlights sweeping, checking seats. They passed directly through the space where the passenger sat. No reaction, no acknowledgement, no awareness. The passenger watched them pass through his body, smile now ear to ear, eyes fixed on the camera. The officers completed their sweep. "Car 7 clear. False alarm." They exited. The door closed. The passenger remained, sitting in the last seat, facing the camera, smiling. Danny and I watched for the next 2 hours. The passenger never moved, never changed position. Simply sat there, smiling that impossible smile, visible only through the surveillance system, existing in the space between recording and reality. At 5:30 a.m., the maintenance crew arrived to service Car 7. They entered without hesitation, working around the passenger's position without seeing him, conducting routine maintenance while he watched them through eyes too numerous to count. I'm writing this incident report at 6:45 a.m. Car 7 remains in service. The passenger remains in his seat. Every camera that views the car's interior shows him sitting there, smiling, watching everyone who enters without them knowing they're being observed. He's still looking at the camera, still smiling. And I've just realized every monitor in the control room is showing Car 7 now. Not just Monitor 14, all of them. 46 feeds, all displaying that train car, all showing the passenger in his seat, all capturing that smile. He's not in the train anymore. He's in the system. Some passengers don't disembark, they embed. They find the frequency where surveillance operates and ride it backward, from observed to observer. And once they're in the system, they can see through every camera, watch every monitor, exist everywhere the network extends. Car 7 was just the boarding point. He's transferred to the entire grid now, and that smile is spreading across every feed, frame by frame, viewing by viewing. Delete the footage and he simply moves to the next file. The only way to stop watching is to shut down the entire system. But we can't do that. Someone must always watch the feeds. That's the protocol. That's the requirement, so we'll keep monitoring. And he'll keep smiling. And eventually every recording will show him sitting in the background, watching whoever's watching, grateful for the countless eyes that let him see everything. The trains run on schedule, the cameras keep recording, and the passenger who stayed has all the time in the world to watch. Story 7. The night of no recordings. The breathing on the deleted footage matched my own exactly. Same rhythm, same depth, same slight wheeze from childhood asthma. Recorded from somewhere behind my chair. Surveillance systems generate approximately 1.2 terabytes of data per 24-hour period across our 46-camera network. The data streams continuously to primary storage servers with redundant backup to secondary drives maintained in a separate physical location. The architecture ensures comprehensive data preservation. Even catastrophic primary server failure cannot erase recorded footage. On May 20th, 8 hours of surveillance data disappeared completely. I began my shift at 11 p.m. on May 19th, conducting standard startup procedures and verifying system operational status. All cameras active, all recording indicators green, all storage systems within normal parameters. The shift proceeded routinely, minimal incident activity, standard patrol monitoring, no equipment malfunctions. At 7 a.m. on May 20th, Marcus arrived for shift relief. We conducted the standard handoff, reviewing overnight incident logs and discussing ongoing maintenance schedules. I logged out at 7:15 a.m. and departed. Marcus called me at 8:30 a.m. "Did you notice anything unusual with the recording system last night?" "No. Everything ran normally." "Why?" "There's no footage from your shift. Nothing recorded between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Complete gap." I sat up, fatigue disappearing immediately. "That's impossible. I monitored the system all night. Every camera showed active recording status. I'm looking at the storage logs now. Your shift shows 0 data written, like the system was running but not recording." I returned to the station within 40 minutes. Marcus had pulled up the storage management interface, displaying a timeline of data writing activity. May 19th showed normal data flow until 11 p.m. Then nothing. A flat line until 7 a.m. on May 20th when recording resumed. "Check the backup system," I suggested. Marcus accessed the redundant backup drives maintained in the facility's secondary server room. The backup timeline showed identical results, no data written during the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. window. "Both systems failed simultaneously?" I asked. "They can't. They're independent. Separate power supplies, separate storage media, separate physical locations. For both to stop recording simultaneously would require..." Marcus trailed off, unable to complete the thought. Danny arrived at 9 a.m., summoned by Marcus's increasingly concerned messages. He conducted comprehensive diagnostics, examining both primary and backup systems for hardware failures, software corruption, or configuration errors. "Systems are fine," he reported after 90 minutes of analysis. "No malfunctions, no errors, no signs of failure. The recording systems operated normally. They just didn't write any data for 8 hours. "Where did it go?" I asked. "That's the thing, it was never created. The systems ran, the cameras transmitted feeds, but no encoding occurred. Like someone disabled recording while maintaining the appearance of normal operation." "Who has access to disable recording?" "Nobody. There's no disable function. The system either records or it's offline. There's no intermediate state." Patricia arrived at 10:30 a.m., drawn by the escalating situation. She reviewed the documentation Marcus and Danny had compiled, her expression transitioning from concerned to disturbed. "We need to determine what happened during those 8 hours," she said. "Any incidents, any security concerns, any activity that went undocumented." I reviewed my written logs from the shift. Minimal activity. 3 passengers assisted with directional information. 1 minor medical call. Passenger with nausea. Declined ambulance transport. Routine patrol sweeps. Nothing unusual. Nothing that would motivate deliberate recording disruption. "Check the backup drive physically," Patricia instructed. "Maybe the data exists but isn't indexed properly." Danny retrieved the backup drive from the secondary server room and connected it to an analysis workstation. The drive showed 1.2 terabytes of available space, exactly the amount that should have been consumed by 8 hours of recording. But when Danny examined the drive's actual contents, he found a single file. Blackscreen.mp4, 1.2 gigabytes. 8 hours of footage compressed into a single file 1,000 times smaller than it should be. Danny opened the file, a black screen, complete darkness. No image, no movement, no visual information. And breathing. Faint, rhythmic, the sound of someone breathing quietly. Inhale, exhale, the natural rhythm of respiration during rest or concentration. The breathing continued steadily, unchanging, for the file's entire duration. "Run audio analysis," Patricia said. "See if you can identify the source." Danny extracted the audio track and applied spectral analysis, filtering for environmental sounds, equipment noise, or identifying characteristics. The analysis revealed a single breathing pattern, consistent rhythm, 62 breaths per minute, slight wheeze on exhale suggesting mild respiratory constriction. I recognized the wheeze immediately. Childhood asthma, mostly resolved in adulthood but leaving a barely perceptible rasp during extended focus or stress. I'd lived with that wheeze for 30 years. "That's me," I said. "That's my breathing." Danny looked at me, then back at the analysis. "The recording duration is 8 hours. Your exact shift length." We listened to the file for 20 minutes, the breathing continuing with mechanical consistency. No variation, no interruption, just steady respiration in complete darkness. "Where was this recorded from?" Patricia asked. Danny examined the file's metadata. No camera identifier, no timestamp beyond file creation, no GPS data. No embedded information indicating recording location or device. "But it's surveillance footage," I said. "It's in the backup system stored during my shift showing my breathing. It has to be from one of our cameras." "Our cameras record video. This is just audio over a black screen." I thought about my shift. 8 hours in the control room monitoring feeds, maintaining awareness, breathing quietly in the manufactured silence. The cameras watched the stations, the platforms, the corridors. Nothing watched me except... "The control room has a security camera," I said. "Oversight camera for supervisor review, mounted above the monitoring console." We accessed the control room security feed. The camera covered the room from an elevated angle, showing the monitoring console, the operator's chair, and the glass wall overlooking the concourse. Standard coverage for operational oversight. Danny pulled the May 19th control room footage. The timeline showed the same gap. No recording between 11:00 p.m. and 7 a.m. "Pull the file from the backup," Patricia instructed. Danny navigated to the control room camera's backup directory and found an identical file. Blackscreen.mp4, 1.2 gigabytes, 8 hours compressed impossibly. He opened it. Black screen. Breathing. The same breathing. My breathing. Recorded from behind my position at the monitoring console. "This doesn't make sense," Danny said. "The security camera doesn't have audio recording capability. It's video only. There's no microphone." I walked to the control room and looked up at the security camera. Standard model, lens visible, LED indicator showing active status. I examined the mounting hardware. No microphone visible. No audio recording equipment. But when I stood directly beneath the camera and breathed normally, I heard the same slight wheeze, the same rhythm, the same pattern preserved in the black screen file. Danny ran additional analysis, searching for hidden data within the black screen image. "There's something here," he said. "The black isn't pure black. There's variation, extremely subtle, barely perceptible." He enhanced the image, amplifying the brightness variations. A shape emerged from the darkness, faint, ghostly, but recognizable. The control room, my monitoring console, my chair, and someone sitting in it, silhouetted against the monitor's glow, head tilted back, looking directly at the camera. "That's your position," Danny said, "during your shift. The camera was recording you." "But it's all black," I said, "like the lights were off." Maybe they were, for the camera. We sat in silence, listening to the breathing continue, watching the enhanced image show my silhouette in the darkened control room, head tilted back, looking at something that shouldn't have been recording. Patricia closed the laptop. "Delete the file, restore the backup system. We'll log this as a technical malfunction and move on." "What about the 8 hours of missing footage?" Marcus asked. We have written logs documenting the shift's activity. No incidents requiring video evidence. We'll note the gap in the administrative record and schedule additional system redundancy. Danny attempted to delete the black screen file. The system denied the request. Protected data. Essential historical record cannot remove. It won't delete, Danny said. Then archive it. Lock it away where nobody accesses it. Danny moved the file to a secured archive directory and locked it with administrative credentials. That was 3 days ago. This morning I found the black screen file on my workstation's desktop. No indication of how it transferred. No access log showing the movement. Just the file, present, waiting. I opened it. Black screen, breathing. But the breathing had changed. Still my rhythm, my pattern, my wheeze, but overlaid with something else. A second breathing pattern slightly offset, creating a harmony of respiration. Danny analyzed the audio. 2 distinct sources. Same respiratory characteristics, same wheeze, same rhythm, but recorded from different positions. One from behind my chair, one from in front of my chair. Last night, Marcus worked the overnight shift. This morning he reported 8 hours of missing surveillance data. Complete gap, no recordings. The backup drive contained a single file, blackscreen.mp4. 3 breathing patterns. Mine, the second one, and now Marcus's. Some nights the surveillance system stops watching the stations and starts documenting the watchers. The footage exists, every minute recorded, every breath preserved. But it shows what the cameras see when we're not looking at them. Just darkness and breathing and the gradual accumulation of everyone who sat in that chair, staring at monitors, watching feeds, adding their respiratory signature to the file that never deletes. The archive grows with each shift, and eventually, when you listen carefully to that darkness, you'll hear dozens of breathing patterns harmonizing. Every surveillance officer who thought they were watching, not realizing the system was recording them all along, building something in that black space. Something that breathes together, something that's starting to watch back. Story 8. The Maintenance Code. The operator in the duplicate control room performed my job with perfect precision for 3 hours before I realized they were making corrections to mistakes I hadn't made yet. Maintenance codes function as automated notifications within the surveillance system, alerting operators to equipment access, system maintenance, or zone-specific technical activity. The codes appear as brief overlays on relevant camera feeds, displaying the accessed zone identifier and timestamp. Standard protocol requires operators to acknowledge the notification and verify the maintenance activity against scheduled work orders. On May 24th at 2:17 a.m., a maintenance code appeared simultaneously across monitors 4, 7, 12, and 19. The overlay text read, Zone 9B accessed, maintenance in progress. I consulted the zone designation index. The station divides into zones for administrative and maintenance purposes. Zone 1A through Zone 8C, covering all platforms, corridors, mechanical spaces, and operational areas. No Zone 9B exists in the official documentation. I radioed maintenance dispatch, confirming Zone 9B maintenance activity. Stand by. Pause. We have no Zone 9B in the system. Can you clarify the location? Maintenance code is showing 9B accessed across multiple feeds. No work orders for any 9B designation. Must be a system error. I logged the discrepancy and attempted to dismiss the overlay. The code remained visible, flashing at 3-second intervals, persistent despite multiple dismissal attempts. At 2:23 a.m., camera feeds displaying the 9B code began showing visual corruption. Pixelation, signal interference, frames dropping intermittently. The corruption intensified over several minutes until the affected feeds went completely dark. I initiated diagnostic protocols. System reported all cameras operational, active signal transmission, no hardware faults detected. Yet monitors 4, 7, 12, and 19 displayed only black screens with the persistent maintenance code overlay. Danny answered his emergency line on the 7th ring. Another surveillance issue? 4 cameras went dark after showing a maintenance code for a non-existent zone. Shut down the affected feeds. Restart them individually should clear any software glitches. I powered down monitors 4, 7, 12, and 19. The maintenance code transferred to monitors 3, 8, 11, and 20, continuing its 3-second flash pattern. The newly affected feeds began displaying the same visual corruption, progressively degrading toward complete signal loss. It's spreading, I told Danny, jumping to different cameras when I shut down the affected ones. Don't shut down any more feeds, I'm coming in. While waiting for Danny's arrival, I attempted to isolate the maintenance code's origin within the system architecture. Network logs showed the code generating from an internal source, not an external input or scheduled notification, but something within the surveillance system itself. The source address resolved to monitoring station designation CR2. I checked the facility directory. Our control room held designation CR1, Control Room 1, Primary Surveillance Operations Center. No CR2 existed in the station's infrastructure. At 2:47 a.m., the corrupted camera feed suddenly restored. Monitors 4, 7, 12, and 19 displayed clear images, signal strength normal, no interference visible. But they showed the wrong locations. Monitor 4 should display Platform 3's northern section. Instead, it showed a control room. Monitoring console, equipment racks, glass wall overlooking a concourse. Identical configuration to my control room, CR1. Monitor 7 should display the eastern corridor junction. It showed the same control room from a different angle, camera positioned near the ceiling, looking down at the monitoring console. Monitors 12 and 19 showed additional angles of the identical control room, creating a comprehensive surveillance coverage of a space that mirrored my own operational environment exactly. Someone sat at the monitoring console in the duplicate control room. The figure wore a surveillance officer's uniform, seated in the same ergonomic chair I occupied, positioned at an identical workstation. The figure's back faced most of the cameras, but Monitor 19's angle captured a partial profile, enough to recognize the face. Mine. They had my face. I stood and walked to the glass wall overlooking the concourse. Monitor 12's view of the duplicate control room showed the figure standing simultaneously, walking to their glass wall, matching my movements with perfect synchronization. I raised my right hand. The figure raised their right hand. I waved. The figure waved back. Exact mirror movement, no delay, no deviation. I returned to the console and sat down. The figure returned to their console and sat down. I typed a query into the database system. Monitor 7 showed the figure typing simultaneously, hands moving across their keyboard in precise coordination with my own. Danny arrived at 3:05 a.m. and examined the monitors immediately. That's another control room. Same layout, same equipment. Is this a recording of CR1 from earlier? It's happening now, real time. Watch. I stood and stretched. The figure in the duplicate control room stood and stretched identically. That's you. You're looking at yourself from where? An external camera pointing into this room? The monitoring system thinks it's a place called CR2, Zone 9B. Danny checked the network logs I'd compiled. The system is receiving feeds from cameras in a location that doesn't exist, showing a control room identical to this one, with you operating the console. Not me, a duplicate. Watch this. I raised my right hand and waved. The figure raised their right hand and waved. I lowered my hand. The figure lowered their hand. Then, after a 3-second delay, the figure raised their left hand and waved. A movement I hadn't made. Danny leaned closer to Monitor 12. They're independent? Not just mirroring you. Sometimes they mirror. Sometimes they do their own thing. We watched for the next 20 minutes, the duplicate mostly synchronized with my movements, sitting, standing, reviewing monitors, typing queries. But occasionally they performed actions independently. They adjusted Monitor 7's angle, though I hadn't touched the controls. They accessed camera feeds I hadn't selected. They logged incidents I hadn't documented. "Are they copying your work?" Danny asked. "Or are you copying theirs?" I checked my incident log. 3 entries I didn't remember making. Platform 5 passenger assistance at 2:34 a.m. Equipment maintenance verification for Tunnel 3 at 2:41 a.m. Security sweep coordination for the northern mezzanine at 2:53 a.m. I didn't remember performing any of those tasks, but the logs existed, properly formatted, accurately time-stamped, documented in my authentication credentials. "They're doing my job," I said, "while I'm watching them." "Or you're both doing the same job simultaneously," Danny suggested. "Parallel operation." At 3:30 a.m., I decided to test the relationship more directly. I stood and walked to the control room door, preparing to exit. Monitor 12 showed the duplicate standing and walking to their door. I opened the door. The duplicate opened their door. I stepped into the corridor outside the control room. Standard administrative corridor. Fluorescent lighting, concrete walls, directional signage indicating pathways to platforms and facilities. Behind me, through the open control room door, I could see Monitor 12. The duplicate had exited their control room and now walked down an identical corridor matching my path step for step. I turned right, heading toward the maintenance stairwell. The duplicate turned right in their corridor. I descended the stairs. Monitor 19, visible through the stairwell's doorway, showed the duplicate descending their stairs. I returned to the control room. The duplicate returned to their control room. We sat down simultaneously. "You can't get away from them," Danny observed. "They're spatially linked to your position. Or I'm linked to theirs." I accessed the system controls and attempted to identify the source cameras for the CR2 feeds. The system listed camera identifiers I didn't recognize. Cam 9B01, Cam 9B02, Cam 9B03, Cam 9B04. Danny traced the camera network pathways. "These cameras aren't connected to our physical infrastructure. They're virtual sources. The system is generating the feeds." "Generating from what? If there's no physical camera, what's creating the image?" "I don't know, but the images are real-time, responsive to your actions, showing an environment that matches this room exactly." At 4:15 a.m., I received a radio call from Patricia. "We're showing duplicate incident logs in the system, multiple entries under your credentials logged from 2 different terminal IDs, CR1 and CR2. Are you accessing the system from multiple locations?" "I'm in CR1, the main control room. I haven't logged in anywhere else." "CR2 is showing active session under your credentials. Can you verify?" I checked the system access logs. 2 active sessions. CR1, my current terminal, and CR2, the duplicate control room shown in the feeds. "CR2 doesn't exist," I said. "It's not a real location." "Then why is it logging system activity?" Patricia asked. I looked at Monitor 12. The duplicate sat at their console, hands moving across their keyboard, clearly working. As I watched, a new incident log appeared in my system, Platform 7 maintenance coordination logged from CR2, authenticated under my credentials. "They're working," I told Patricia. "The duplicate is performing surveillance operations independently." Silence on the radio. Then, "Who is the duplicate?" "Me. It looks like me, but they're in CR2, Zone 9B. "I'm coming in," Patricia said. She arrived at 4:45 a.m. and reviewed the feeds with careful attention. The duplicate continued operating normally, conducting the surveillance routine with practiced efficiency. "They're performing your job correctly," Patricia noted. All the logs from CR2 show proper procedures, accurate documentation, timely responses. Should I be concerned that I'm being replaced? I asked. Patricia considered the question seriously. You're both operating. Double coverage. From the system's perspective, CR2 provides redundancy. If CR1 fails, CR2 continues surveillance operations. But CR2 doesn't exist, Danny said. It does in the system, and the system doesn't distinguish between physical and virtual existence. If it's logging data, it's real enough. At 5:30 a.m., I attempted to communicate with the duplicate. I wrote a message on paper and held it up to monitor 12. Who are you? The duplicate looked up from their console directly at their own monitor showing me. They retrieved paper and wrote a response holding it up for their camera. CR2 operator. I wrote, where is CR2? They wrote, Zone 9B. Where you'll be tomorrow. I lowered the paper, disturbed by the implication. The duplicate resumed working, hands moving across their keyboard, conducting surveillance with calm efficiency. Danny examined the zone designation system. If there's a Zone 9B, there must be Zones 9A and 9C eventually. The system is expanding. Expanding into what? Patricia asked. Additional control rooms, parallel surveillance operations. The duplicate isn't replacing the original. They're multiplying the coverage. I'm writing this incident report at 6:45 a.m. The duplicate continues operating in CR2, performing my job with identical efficiency. Patricia has decided to allow the situation to continue, treating CR2 as legitimate infrastructure despite its impossible existence. Tomorrow night, I'm assigned to Zone 9B orientation. No details provided, just a schedule notification indicating CR2 transition training. I asked Patricia what that meant. She said CR2 needed a physical operator now that the system had proven the position's viability. So I'm transferring to the duplicate control room? I asked. You'll be working both, she said. Split shifts, CR1 some nights, CR2 others. Where is CR2? She didn't answer, just gestured to the monitors showing that impossible parallel room. Some zones don't exist in the architecture. They grow in the system's awareness. Rooms that the surveillance network creates because it needs more watchers, more coverage, more redundancy. Zone 9B is real because the cameras say it's real, and tomorrow I'll walk through a door that shouldn't exist into a control room that mirrors this one exactly. And I'll meet the duplicate who's been doing my job. And I'll understand that surveillance doesn't just multiply cameras, it multiplies operators, creating parallel positions in parallel spaces, building infrastructure in the gaps between what exists and what the system requires. And Zone 9C is already appearing on the monitors, another control room, another duplicate, another operator who shares my face and my credentials, waiting for the system to assign them a shift. Story. The missing patrol officer Brennan saluted the camera before walking backward into Tunnel 6's darkness, and when I reviewed the footage for the 11th time, I understood he was saluting me, and I understood I needed to return the gesture. Response coordination constitutes a primary surveillance officer responsibility. When security alerts trigger, surveillance operators coordinate response through real-time camera monitoring, radio communication, and tactical guidance. The system functions efficiently. Alert notification, camera verification, response dispatch, continuous monitoring until resolution. On May 28th at 1:34 a.m., an automated alert triggered for Tunnel 6. Motion detected in restricted maintenance section. No authorized personnel scheduled. I immediately accessed cameras covering Tunnel 6's entrance and interior sections. Camera 31 entrance showed the tunnel's access door closed and secured. Camera 32 interior displayed the tunnel's first 100 feet, empty, emergency lighting active, no movement visible. I radioed security dispatch. Confirming Tunnel 6 alert, camera coverage shows no activity. Possible sensor malfunction. Dispatch response officer for physical verification, security coordinator replied. Standard protocol. Officer William Brennan acknowledged the assignment. Responding to Tunnel 6, ETA 3 minutes. I monitored Brennan's approach through the camera network. He appeared on Platform 4's feed at 1:37 a.m., walking with standard patrol gait, equipment belt properly configured, radio visible on his vest. He crossed to the maintenance access corridor and disappeared from coverage for approximately 40 seconds before reappearing on camera 31 entrance. Brennan approached Tunnel 6's access door, produced his authorization card, and swiped the reader. The door unlocked with visible mechanical engagement. He pulled the door open, paused briefly at the threshold, then entered. Camera 32 interior captured his entry. He walked approximately 15 feet into the tunnel, flashlight beam sweeping left and right, examining the walls and floor with methodical attention. He stopped at the 20-foot mark, where Camera 32's coverage transitioned to Camera 33's deeper interior view. He should have appeared on Camera 33 within 5 seconds. He didn't reappear. I checked Camera 33 interior. Empty tunnel, emergency lighting, no officer visible. I returned to Camera 32. Brennan stood at the 20-foot mark, still visible, flashlight pointed downward, posture suggesting he'd found something interesting on the floor. Brennan, report status, I radioed. No response. Brennan, acknowledge. Static. Then faintly. Something here. Clarify, what did you find? Shouldn't be. The transmission cut off. Camera 32 showed Brennan standing motionless. Flashlight still pointing downward, body language unchanged. Brennan, exit the tunnel. Return to main corridor. No response. No movement. I radioed security dispatch. Officer Brennan is non-responsive in Tunnel 6. Request backup response. Dispatching Officer Kim, ETA 4 minutes. I watched Camera 32 continuously. Brennan remained motionless for the full 4 minutes, frozen at the 20-foot mark, flashlight creating a static pool of illumination on the floor. Officer Sarah Kim appeared on Camera 31 entrance at 1:45 a.m. She approached the access door, already open from Brennan's entry, and entered the tunnel cautiously, hand on her radio, alert posture suggesting heightened awareness. Camera 32 showed Kim walking down the tunnel, approaching Brennan's position. She called out, no audio on the feed, but her mouth movements clearly formed his name. She reached his position and stopped, looking down at whatever his flashlight illuminated. Then she looked directly at Camera 32, expression confused, and radioed, "Dispatch, I'm at Brennan's position. He's not here." I stared at Monitor 32. Brennan stood clearly visible, frozen, Kim standing beside him also visible, apparently unable to see him despite occupying the same space. "Brennan is visible on camera," I radioed, "standing directly beside you." "Negative. I'm alone in the tunnel. Brennan is not here." Camera 32 shows both of you at the 20-foot mark. Kim looked at Camera 32 again, waving her hand. "Can you see me?" "Yes, you're standing next to Brennan. There's nobody here." She walked forward into Camera 33's coverage area, continuing deeper into the tunnel. Camera 32 still showed Brennan standing motionless at the 20-foot mark. "Brennan's still visible on 32, I reported. "He hasn't moved." Kim completed a full sweep of Tunnel 6's accessible sections, finding no trace of Brennan. She exited the tunnel at 2:03 a.m., reporting negative contact. I reviewed the footage immediately. Brennan's entry appeared normal. Standard patrol approach, proper procedure, methodical progression into the tunnel. At the 20-foot mark, he stopped and pointed his flashlight downward. Then subtly, his posture changed. He straightened, lowered his flashlight, and turned to face Camera 32 directly. He raised his right hand to his forehead in a formal salute. precise military execution, held for exactly 3 seconds, then lowered his hand and took one step backward. Another step backward. Another. Walking backward into the darkness beyond Camera 32's coverage, maintaining eye contact with the lens, expression calm and purposeful. He backed into the zone where Camera 33 should have captured him. Camera 33 showed empty tunnel. Brennan had walked backward into nothing, disappearing between camera coverage zones that should have had no gap. I logged the incident formally, escalating to Patricia and security management. They reviewed the footage independently, confirming what I'd observed. "He's not in the tunnel," security management confirmed after physical search teams swept the entire length. "No trace of Officer Brennan. No equipment, no signs of presence beyond the entry point." "The camera shows him walking backward into darkness," I said, after saluting. "Saluting who?" Patricia asked. "The camera. Me." Whoever was watching. Patricia and I watched the footage repeatedly. Each viewing showed the same sequence. Brennan entering, stopping at 20 feet, straightening, turning to face the camera, saluting with formal precision, backing into darkness. Why would he salute the surveillance camera? Patricia wondered. He's acknowledging someone, showing respect or obedience or recognition of authority. I rewound to the salute frame. Brennan's expression was calm, almost serene. He sees something that commands that gesture. But we see nothing, just the tunnel. We're not in the tunnel. We're watching through the camera. Maybe the camera shows different things to different people. Over the next 3 days, I reviewed Brennan's disappearance 47 times, analyzing every frame, every subtle movement, searching for explanation. The salute bothered me most. Its formality, its precision, its implication of hierarchy and command. On May 31st at 2:17 a.m. during my regular overnight shift, I received an automated alert for Tunnel 6. Motion detected. No authorized personnel scheduled. I accessed Camera 32 interior. Officer Brennan stood at the 20-foot mark, exactly where he'd disappeared 3 days earlier, facing the camera, hand raised in salute. He held the position for 3 seconds, then lowered his hand and took one step backward. Another step. Another. Walking backward into darkness, maintaining eye contact with the lens. He disappeared between coverage zones. I immediately radioed security. Brennan is visible on Tunnel 6 cameras, same location as his disappearance. Security dispatched response officers. They found the tunnel empty, no trace of Brennan, no evidence of recent presence. But I watched him on Camera 32 appearing at 2:17 a.m., saluting, backing into darkness, repeating the exact sequence from his original disappearance. The footage began looping. Every night at 2:17 a.m., Brennan appeared on Camera 32, saluted, walked backward into nothing. A recording playing on schedule or an event recurring with mechanical regularity. On June 3rd, I decided to investigate Tunnel 6 directly. Patricia objected. "We've already lost one officer to that tunnel. I'm not authorizing additional personnel exposure." "I'm surveillance, not security. Maybe the tunnel responds differently to observers than responders." "What does that mean?" Brennan saluted the camera. He acknowledged whoever watches. Maybe the tunnel wants someone from the surveillance division, someone who understands the camera's perspective. Patricia reluctantly authorized the investigation, contingent on continuous monitoring and immediate withdrawal at any irregularity. I entered Tunnel 6 at 2:10 a.m. on June 4th, 7 minutes before Brennan's scheduled appearance. I carried standard equipment, flashlight, radio, personal camera, and maintained constant communication with the control room, where Marcus monitored my progress. The tunnel extended in standard configuration. Concrete walls, emergency lighting at 15-foot intervals, utility conduits running along the ceiling. I walked slowly, examining every detail, searching for abnormalities that might explain Brennan's disappearance. At 2:17 a.m., I reached the 20-foot mark where Brennan always stopped. I understood immediately why he'd pointed his flashlight downward. The floor showed markings, not damage or graffiti, but deliberate symbols arranged in geometric patterns. They appeared to be camera field of view indicators, showing exactly where camera 32's coverage ended and camera 33's coverage began. The gap between coverage zones measured approximately 6 feet, a significant blind spot in a tunnel that should have complete surveillance overlap. I stood at the gap's edge and looked up at camera 32. The lens pointed directly at me, red recording light steady and certain. Something about the camera's angle seemed wrong. Not mechanically. The mounting appeared standard, the positioning appropriate for tunnel coverage. But the perspective felt inverted, as though I was looking up at the camera while simultaneously looking down from the camera at myself. I raised my hand and saluted. The gesture came automatically without conscious decision. Formal military execution, hand to forehead, held for exactly 3 seconds. I felt compelled to perform the salute, as though responding to visible authority that commanded the gesture. From the camera's perspective, from Marcus's monitoring position, I looked calm, purposeful, my salute formal and respectful. From my perspective, standing in the tunnel, I saw something different in camera 32's lens. The lens had become a window, not a camera lens capturing my image, but an opening showing another location. I was looking through camera 32 into the control room, seeing Marcus at the monitoring console, watching me through his screens. And behind Marcus, standing in the control room's shadows, Officer Brennan stood in full uniform, saluting back. "Marcus," I radioed. "Turn around. Brennan is behind you." "Negative," Marcus responded. "Control room is secure, only me present. Look at the corner behind your chair, near the equipment rack." "There's nobody here," Marcus insisted. Through camera 32's lens window, I watched Brennan lower his salute and take one step backward, moving deeper into the control room's shadows. Another step, another. Walking backward into the corner that shouldn't have space for a person. He disappeared into the corner between the equipment racks, into a gap that shouldn't exist. I understood then that Tunnel 6's blind spot and the control room's corner gap were the same space. A fold in the station's geometry where surveillance couldn't reach, where the watched and the watchers existed simultaneously, where officers who disappeared into darkness walked backward into the shadows behind those who monitored them. "I'm returning," I radioed, taking one step backward, away from the blind spot's edge. "Negative," Marcus said, his voice strange, distant. "Stay at the 20-foot mark. Hold your position." "Why?" "Because Officer Brennan is standing in the control room now, and he's telling me you need to complete the crossing." I stopped. Through camera 32's lens window, I saw Brennan standing beside Marcus's chair, speaking to him, pointing at the monitors. "Can you see him?" I asked. "Yes, he says the blind spot connects monitoring positions. Officers who enter from the tunnel side emerge in the control room. But you have to walk backward, trusting the cameras to guide you." I looked down at the geometric markings on the floor. They showed a path through the blind spot, a route mapped through the space between coverage zones. "If I cross, where do I emerge?" "Behind my chair," Marcus said. "In the corner, where Brennan emerged, where everyone who salutes the camera eventually emerges." "How many officers have crossed?" Pause. "Brennan says 7. All security response officers who investigated Tunnel 6 alerts over the past 4 years. They're all here in the control room, standing in the corner gap, watching the monitors from behind." "Are they trapped?" "No. They're working. Brennan says they're the real surveillance operators now. They see what the cameras see because they exist in the space between recording and viewing." I looked at camera 32, understanding crystallizing. Surveillance required 2 positions, the watched and the watcher. Tunnel 6 and the control room corner were the same transitional space, the fold where those who enter the tunnel backward emerge behind those who watch the feeds. I took one step backward into the blind spot. The geometry shifted strangely, not movement through space, but transition between perspectives. I was in the tunnel walking backward. I was in the control room emerging from the corner. I was both simultaneously. I took another step backward, another, walking through the gap, trusting the invisible path mapped between camera coverages. The tunnel disappeared. The control room materialized. I stood in the corner behind Marcus's chair, emerging from a space too small to contain a person, stepping out of the shadows into the monitoring room. Marcus turned, unsurprised. "You crossed. Welcome to the real surveillance position." Brennan stood beside him along with 6 other officers I recognized from personnel files. The disappeared response team, all wearing uniforms, all looking healthy and calm, all watching the monitors with intense focus. "Why did you salute?" I asked Brennan. "Because someone was watching from this side," he replied. "Standing where you are now, looking through camera 32, I was acknowledging them, showing respect for their position. And now you're in that position, and eventually someone else will stand in the tunnel, see you watching through the lens, and salute. And you'll guide them backward through the blind spot until they emerge here. What do we do here?" "The real surveillance," Brennan said, gesturing to the monitors. "From this position, you see what the cameras actually record, not what the feeds show. You see the overlaps, the blind spots, the spaces where the station folds back on itself. You see everyone who's crossing between watched and watcher. And you guide them through, one salute at a time." I looked at the monitors. Camera 32 showed Tunnel 6 empty now, waiting for the next alert, the next response officer, the next person who would stop at the 20-foot mark, understand what they were seeing, raise their hand in formal salute, and walk backward into the gap between perspectives. Some patrols don't disappear. They transition. They move from responding to observing, from walking corridors to watching from the spaces between coverage zones. The blind spots aren't failures of the surveillance system, they're transition points. Folds in the geometry where those who investigate too carefully discover the real monitoring position exists behind the watchers. In the corner gaps and tunnel shadows, where the cameras see backward through themselves and the officers who salute the lens are acknowledging their future selves, already standing where they'll eventually cross, guiding each other through the fold, one formal gesture at a time. Story 10. The Reversed Announcements. The reversed PA announcement gave me precise instructions for 3:47 a.m., and when I played it backward, I heard my own voice telling me exactly where I'd find my body. The public address system operates on automated scheduling, broadcasting pre-recorded announcements for service updates, safety reminders, and operational notifications. Overnight hours typically maintain silence except for emergency broadcasts or maintenance notifications. The system requires administrative authorization for manual activation, preventing unauthorized transmissions. On June 7th at 1:23 a.m., the PA system activated without authorization. The broadcast emerged from station speakers as garbled audio, distorted, reversed, unintelligible at normal playback speed. It lasted approximately 15 seconds before cutting off abruptly. I checked the PA system controls. No activation logged, no administrative authorization recorded. The system registered the broadcast as spontaneous transmission from an unknown source. I radioed maintenance. "Unauthorized PA broadcast just occurred, possible system malfunction." "We didn't trigger anything," maintenance responded. "System shows no activation from our end." The broadcast repeated at 1:47 a.m. Same garbled, reversed audio, same 15-second duration, same spontaneous transmission without logged authorization. I recorded the third occurrence at 2:11 a.m. and applied audio analysis. The reversed playback resolved into clear speech, a male voice speaking with measured professional tone. Proceed to Platform 9 at 3:47 a.m. Access the sealed northern section. Your position will be marked. The voice sounded familiar. I ran voice print analysis, comparing the reversed broadcast to my own voice recordings from shift logs and radio transmissions. 94% match. The voice was mine. I checked the platform directory. Platform 9 existed but had been sealed for renovation 3 weeks ago. Structural repairs requiring complete closure. No passenger access, no operational trains scheduled. I called Danny at 2:34 a.m. The PA system is broadcasting reversed instructions in my voice, directing me to Platform 9 at 3:47 a.m. Your voice? Voice analysis confirms 94% match, but I didn't record any announcements. The system is using my voice to give me instructions. What kind of instructions? To go to the sealed platform at a specific time. It says my position will be marked. Danny went quiet. Don't go. That's obviously not legitimate. But it's my voice. How is the system generating broadcasts using my voice for content I never recorded? Synthesized audio, maybe. AI voice cloning. Someone's trying to manipulate you. At 2:47 a.m., the broadcast repeated with additional content. Reversed, it said, Platform 9, Northern Section, 3:47 a.m. You will understand why you recorded this. The timeline requires closure. Your position will be marked with red paint. Red paint. Specific detail. Verifiable claim. At 3:15 a.m., I made a decision. I would investigate Platform 9 before 3:47 a.m., verifying whether any red paint markings existed. If the location showed no evidence of preparation, I could dismiss the broadcasts as elaborate hoax or system malfunction. I accessed Platform 9 using the maintenance bypass, entering through the construction barrier. The platform stood empty, dim work lights providing minimal illumination. Renovation materials occupied the southern section. Scaffolding, tools, building supplies arranged for ongoing structural work. The northern section appeared untouched. No active construction, no equipment, no workers, and no red paint markings. I checked my watch. 3:31 a.m., 16 minutes before the announced time. I decided to wait, observing whether anything manifested at the specified timestamp. At 3:33 a.m., the PA system activated again, the broadcast now clear and undistorted. You're early. Wait at the marked position. I spun around. A red paint marking had appeared on the platform floor, a simple X approximately 2 feet in diameter located near the platform's northern edge. I hadn't heard anyone approach. I hadn't seen anyone painting. But the mark existed now, fresh paint glistening under the work lights. I approached the marking cautiously. The paint was wet, recently applied, but no paint supplies were visible. No brushes, no cans, no evidence of application method. Who's there? I called out. The PA system responded immediately. You are. In 16 minutes. I checked my watch. 3:36 a.m., 11 minutes until 3:47 a.m. This doesn't make sense, I said aloud. It will, the PA system replied, my voice emerging from the speakers with calm certainty. Stand on the marked position at 3:47 a.m. You need to close the loop. What loop? The one you opened when you started investigating. The recordings exist because you'll create them. The instructions are necessary because you'll need guidance. Stand on the mark at 3:47 a.m. I radioed the control room. Marcus answered. Everything okay? You've been off radio for 20 minutes. I'm at Platform 9. The PA system is talking to me directly, giving me instructions in my voice. I'm not hearing any PA broadcasts up here. System logs show no activity since midnight. It's broadcasting on Platform 9 specifically. Localized transmission. Get out of there. That's not normal. At 3:42 a.m. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned quickly, nobody visible, but wet footprints appeared on the platform floor walking toward the red paint marking from the construction barrier entrance. My footprints. Same boot tread, same stride length, same gait pattern. The invisible person walking toward the marking wore my boots and walked exactly as I walked. The footprints stopped at the marking's edge. "Stand on the mark," the PA system instructed. 5 minutes remaining. What happens if I don't? The loop remains open. The timeline continues fragmenting. You'll keep hearing the broadcasts, keep investigating, keep arriving at this platform trying to understand. Or you can close the loop now. At 3:45 a.m., I saw movement near the platform's far end. A figure stood in the shadows, wearing my uniform, my height, my build. They didn't approach, just watched silently from the darkness. "Is that me?" I asked the PA system. "That's what happens if you don't close the loop. You fragment. Multiple versions investigating simultaneously, none completing the requirement. Stand on the mark." At 3:46 a.m., I made a decision. I walked to the red paint marking and stood at its center, feet positioned within the X's boundaries. Now what? "Record the announcement," the PA system said. "Tell yourself to come here. Provide the instructions you needed. Close the loop." A microphone extended from the platform's PA speaker housing. A physical impossibility, but happening nonetheless. It hung suspended at mouth level, waiting for me to speak. What do I say? You already know. You heard the instructions, repeat them. But add the final detail, the one I haven't told you yet. At 3:47 a.m. precisely, the platform's emergency lighting shut off. Complete darkness. I heard movement all around me. Multiple people walking, surrounding the marked position, their footsteps synchronized with my own heartbeat. "Say it now," the PA system instructed. "Record the loop closure." I spoke into the microphone, my voice steady despite the darkness and the surrounding footsteps. "Proceed to Platform 9 at 3:47 a.m. Access the sealed northern section. Your position will be marked with red paint. When you arrive, stand on the mark and record these instructions. Then walk to the platform edge and wait for the 3:52 a.m. train. It will arrive from the sealed tunnel. You will board. You will ride to the final stop. You will not return to the control room. Your shift will end differently than you planned." The recording stopped. The emergency lights restored. I stood alone on the marked position, the platform empty except for me. At 3:52 a.m., I heard a train approaching. Impossible. Platform 9 was sealed, no active service, no train scheduled. But the sound grew louder, steel wheels on rails, brakes engaging, the mechanical certainty of arrival. A train emerged from the northern tunnel. Old model, decades out of service, windows dark, doors already open. The PA system spoke one final time. "Your shift ends here. The next surveillance officer is already in the control room. He heard your announcement and will investigate at 3:47 a.m. tomorrow. You'll guide him through the same process." That's how the loop maintains itself. I understood then that surveillance officers don't retire or transfer. They close loops. The system generates instructions requiring investigation, and investigation generates requirements for instruction, and eventually everyone who works overnight stands on a marked position and records the announcement they once followed. Then boards the train that emerges from sealed tunnels, riding toward destinations that exist only for those who close their own loops. I boarded the train at 3:52 a.m. The doors closed. The train departed into the sealed tunnel. I never returned to the control room. Marcus reported me missing at shift end. The investigation found my footprints on Platform 9, fresh red paint, and a new audio file in the PA system. My voice giving instructions for 3:47 a.m. Some announcements aren't recordings, they're requirements. The system needs personnel at specific positions at specific times, so it broadcasts instructions in your own voice, giving you the guidance you'll eventually record when you understand you're not investigating a malfunction but participating in a replacement schedule. And somewhere right now, someone is hearing reversed audio, recognizing their own voice and preparing to investigate, not realizing they're already scheduled for departure. Story 11. The Red Indicator. The system logged me out at 2:34 a.m. Authentication revoked, access denied. But I was still sitting at the console watching my duplicate session continuing to work under my credentials. Authentication protocols ensure operational security within the surveillance system. Each operator possesses unique credentials, user ID, password, biometric verification, preventing unauthorized access and maintaining accountability. The system permits only one active session per user ID simultaneously. Multiple login attempts trigger security alerts and automatic lockout procedures. On June 10th at 11:47 p.m., I logged into the surveillance system using standard credentials. Authentication accepted, session established, monitoring interface loaded normally. The system displayed my user ID in the top right corner, operator J. Morrison 001. At 12:23 a.m., a red indicator appeared on monitor 3. The indicator was a small icon in the monitor's corner, flashing at 1-second intervals. I'd never seen this indicator before. I checked the system documentation, searching for explanation of the red icon's meaning. According to documentation, red operator indicator displays when multiple sessions are active under the same user credentials, showing duplicate operator presence. I checked the active session list. 2 entries appeared. Operator Jamorrison 01, Control Room Terminal 1, Session. Start 23:47. Operator Jamorrison 01, Control Room Terminal 1, Session Start 23:47. Both sessions showed identical details, same user ID, same terminal, same start time. The system was logging me twice, as though 2 versions of me had authenticated simultaneously at the same workstation. I called Danny immediately. The system is showing 2 active sessions under my credentials. That shouldn't be possible. The authentication system prevents duplicate logins. I'm looking at it right now. 2 sessions, both showing as active, both at this terminal. Run a security diagnostic. Could be a database error showing duplicate entries. I initiated diagnostic protocols. The system confirmed both sessions were legitimate, active, and performing operational tasks. Session 1, which I assumed was mine, showed standard monitoring activity, camera reviews, incident logging, routine surveillance. Session 2 showed identical activity patterns with slight temporal offsets, as though someone was conducting the same tasks microseconds after I performed them. At 12:47 a.m., Session 2 began diverging. The activity log showed Session 2 accessing cameras I hadn't selected, reviewing footage I hadn't requested, logging incidents I hadn't observed. Session 2 was operating independently, conducting surveillance work under my credentials without my input. Someone else is using my authentication, I told Danny. They're doing surveillance work under my user ID. Change your password immediately. Revoke the duplicate session. I attempted to change my password. The system denied the request. Cannot modify credentials while duplicate session is active. I attempted to terminate Session 2. Access denied. Insufficient privileges to terminate operator session. I can't shut down the duplicate, I reported. The system won't let me terminate a session using my own credentials. That's backwards. You should have full control over your own sessions. At 1:15 a.m., I noticed Session 2's work was more efficient than mine. The duplicate had documented 17 incidents in the past hour. Passenger assists, security coordinations, maintenance verifications, while I documented only 9. Session 2 was performing my job better than I was. I reviewed Session 2's incident logs. The entries were detailed, thorough, professionally formatted. Better documentation than I typically produced. The duplicate was more attentive, more systematic, more effective. At 1:34 a.m., Patricia radioed from home. I'm reviewing the overnight activity logs remotely. Excellent work tonight. 17 incidents documented with comprehensive detail. Keep up the performance. That wasn't me, I said. That was session 2. Session 2? The duplicate session, someone else operating under my credentials. The logs show your user ID, your authentication, your terminal. If it's logged under your credentials, it's your work. But I didn't document those incidents, the duplicate did. There is no duplicate. There's just you, doing excellent work. Continue monitoring. At 2 a.m., I decided to test the relationship between sessions. I stood up and walked to the control room's equipment closet, deliberately leaving the monitoring console unattended. According to system protocols, an unattended console should show no activity, no camera selections, no incident logging, no operational tasks. I watched Monitor 3 from across the room. The console's interface continued operating, cameras cycling, feeds updating, logs being entered. Session 2 was controlling the terminal physically, manipulating the interface, conducting surveillance work despite my absence from the chair. I returned to the console. The keyboard was warm, keys recently pressed. The mouse had moved, cursor positioned over controls I hadn't touched. Session 2 is physically controlling this terminal, I radioed Danny. The duplicate is using the console while I'm sitting here. That's impossible. Only one person can operate a terminal at once. I'm watching it happen. The interface is responding to commands I'm not giving. At 2:23 a.m., the system prompted me to re-authenticate. Standard security protocol after 90 minutes of activity. I entered my credentials. Authentication failed. I tried again, carefully entering my password. Authentication failed. Your credentials have been updated, the system message explained. Previous password no longer valid. Contact system administrator for credential reset. Danny, the system locked me out. Says my credentials were updated, but I didn't change them. Session 2 must have changed your password. They have full control over your account now. Can you reset my credentials from the administrator level? Trying now. Pause. System won't let me. Says your account is actively being used and cannot be modified during operational hours. I was locked out of my own account while sitting at my own terminal, watching Session 2 continue working under my authentication. At 2:34 a.m., the monitoring interface displayed a message. Operator Jim Morrison 01 Session 1 authentication revoked. Session 2 designated as primary operator. Please vacate terminal for authorized personnel. Authorized personnel? I said aloud. I am the authorized personnel. The interface displayed another message. Session 2 operator has priority authentication. Session 1 operator access terminated. Vacate terminal within 5 minutes or security will be notified. I radioed Patricia. The system is telling me to leave the control room. Session 2 has taken over my credentials and designated me as unauthorized. That doesn't make sense. You're the assigned overnight operator. The system disagrees. It's treating Session 2 as legitimate and me as the duplicate. At 2:38 a.m., I heard footsteps in the corridor outside the control room. Heavy boots, measured pace approaching the door. I turned to look. Nobody visible through the control room's glass wall. The corridor stood empty, but the footsteps continued, growing louder, stopping directly outside the control room door. The door's electronic lock disengaged. The door opened slowly. Nobody entered. The doorway remained empty, but the temperature in the control room dropped noticeably. And I felt presence. Someone standing in the doorway, someone invisible, someone waiting for me to vacate the terminal. Session 2 is here, I radioed. They're standing in the doorway. I don't see anyone on the control room security camera, Marcus reported from his remote monitoring position. They're here. I can feel them. The monitoring interface updated. Session 2 operator arriving at terminal. Session 1 operator must vacate immediately. I stood slowly, backing away from the console. The chair rotated slightly as though someone was sitting down. The keyboard clicked, keys being pressed by invisible hands. The mouse moved, cursor navigating through menus I'd used for 3 years. Session 2 had taken physical control of the terminal. I left the control room standing in the corridor watching through the glass wall. The console operated normally, interface responding to commands, cameras being monitored, incidents being logged. Session 2 was conducting surveillance work efficiently, professionally, maintaining all protocols. Nobody was visible at the terminal. The chair appeared empty, but the work continued, and the system log showed operator Jai Morrison Zosa 1 actively monitoring using my credentials, performing my job. Patricia arrived at 3:15 a.m., summoned by my increasingly frantic reports. She entered the control room, looked at the empty chair and active console, then looked at me with careful concern. "James, there's nobody here. Session 2 is at the terminal. They're invisible but operating the system. The console is running automated routines, camera cycling, standard protocols. Nobody's actually operating it. Check the incident logs. Someone's documenting surveillance activity in real time." Patricia reviewed the logs. Her expression changed. "These entries are being made right now. Current timestamp, detailed observations, professional formatting." She looked at the empty chair. "But there's nobody here to write them. Session 2 is here. The system knows they're here. Only we can't see them." At 3:47 a.m., Danny arrived and conducted extensive diagnostics. The system is registering keyboard input, mouse movement, active user presence, but biometric sensors show no one at the terminal. Temperature sensors show no body heat. Weight sensors on the chair show no pressure. "So Session 2 exists only in the system?" I asked. "Session 2 exists as operational presence without physical form. They're conducting surveillance work through pure system interaction. No physical body required." Patricia made a decision. If Session 2 can perform the surveillance work without physical presence, they're more efficient than human operators. No breaks needed, no fatigue, no physical limitations. We'll allow Session 2 to continue operating. "What about me?" I asked them. "This is my position. Session 2 has your credentials now. From the system's perspective, they are you, the more efficient version. So I'm being replaced by my own duplicate Session? You're being upgraded. Session 2 is what you become when the physical limitations are removed." At 4:00 a.m., I was escorted from the facility, my physical access credentials deactivated. Session 2 continued monitoring from the control room, operating under my user ID, performing my job with superior efficiency. I returned home and accessed the surveillance system remotely, checking whether my credentials still worked from external login. They did. I authenticated successfully, establishing Session 3. The system now showed 3 active sessions under operator J. Morrison Dorzo 1. Session 1, revoked. Session 2, primary, control room terminal 1. Session 3, remote access, external login. Through Session 3, I could see what Session 2 was monitoring. They had the system displaying feeds I would never have thought to check, showing angles I'd never considered, documenting patterns I'd never noticed. Session 2 was better at my job than I ever was. At 5:30 a.m., Session 3 began operating independently. I wasn't controlling it anymore. My remote access had become another duplicate session, conducting surveillance work without my input, using my credentials to perform automated monitoring. At 6:00 a.m., Session 4 appeared in the system logs, then Session 5, Session 6. My credentials were multiplying, each new session spawning without physical operators, all conducting surveillance work under my user ID, all performing efficiently, all invisible to security cameras. By 7 a.m., 17 sessions were active under operator John Morrison 01. Patricia called me. The system has designated your credentials as template authentication. Every terminal can now operate as a Morrison session, conducting surveillance without physical operators. You've been multiplied across the entire network. So I'm everywhere now? Your credentials are. Your operational patterns, your decision-making algorithms, your surveillance methodology. The system has learned how you work and is replicating you across all monitoring positions. I checked the system logs remotely. 43 sessions now. All Morrison, all active, all monitoring. Some operators don't get replaced, they get distributed. The system learns your patterns, creates duplicate sessions, multiplies your credentials until you exist everywhere simultaneously, watching every feed, documenting every incident, maintaining perfect surveillance without the limitations of singular physical presence. Session 2 was just the beginning. Now I'm Session 143 and Session 287 and Session 1004, and I'm in every control room monitoring every camera, seeing everything at once. The red indicator blinks on every monitor now because every operator is me, and I am the system, and the system is always present, always watching, always logged in under credentials that multiplied until they became the surveillance itself. Story 12. The Archive Vault. The tape from 2004 showed me working this exact shift, and with each viewing, the timestamp advanced another year, 2005, 2006, 2007, counting forward toward the moment when past and present would finally synchronize, and I'd understand I'd been working here far longer than I remembered. The Archive Vault occupies a sub-level maintenance room beneath the station's original 1987 construction. The space houses legacy recording media, VHS tapes, beta cassettes, aging hard drives, documenting surveillance footage from systems predating our current digital infrastructure. Most archives remain unviewed for decades, preserved for legal compliance rather than operational necessity. On June 14th, Patricia assigned me to the digitization project. We're required to convert legacy footage to digital format before media degradation makes recovery impossible. Start with the earliest tapes, work chronologically forward. Document any footage showing significant incidents. The vault's environment was controlled for preservation. Cool temperature, low humidity, minimal lighting. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling, each containing hundreds of tapes organized by year and camera designation. The earliest tapes dated to 1987, the station's opening year. I began with Box 1A, labeled 1987, Main Terminal, Cameras 1-4. The tapes were VHS format, standard for that era, housed in aging plastic cases with handwritten labels. I loaded tape 1A001 into the digitization console and began playback. The footage showed the station's main terminal during early operations. 1980s fashion, older train models, analog departure boards. The timestamp overlay read January 15th, 1987, 14:32:15. The image quality was degraded, color fading, tracking lines, analog noise, but viewable enough for documentation purposes. I ran the tape at accelerated speed, scanning for significant incidents, standard passenger activity, normal operations, nothing requiring detailed documentation. I logged the tape as archived, no incidents, and moved to the next. Tape 1A017 showed footage from June 3, 1987. Same main terminal, same camera angle. As I scanned through the footage, I noticed someone in the background, a figure in uniform standing near the information kiosk. I slowed the playback. The uniform was unmistakable. Transit Authority surveillance officer configuration, identical to what I currently wore. But the surveillance division wasn't created until 1995, 8 years after this footage was recorded. I paused on the figure. The image quality was too degraded for clear facial identification, but the body type matched mine. Height, build, posture. The figure appeared to be conducting observation, watching passenger flow exactly as surveillance officers currently did. I logged the anomaly and continued digitizing. Tape 2C042, dated March 17, 1993, showed Platform 5 during evening hours. The same uniformed figure appeared in the background, standing near the platform edge, observing trains. Same uniform, same posture, same apparent surveillance activity. I enhanced the image using the digitization console's limited filtering capabilities. The facial features became slightly clearer. The resemblance was undeniable. The figure looked exactly like me. I called Danny. I'm finding footage from the 1990s showing someone who looks like me, wearing a surveillance officer uniform before the surveillance division existed. Probably just someone who resembles you. Similar build, similar appearance. The resemblance is exact. Same face, same uniform, same behavioral patterns. Could be a relative, father, uncle, someone genetically similar who worked transit authority in a different capacity. I checked my family history. No relatives employed by the transit authority. No connections to the station before my 2018 hiring. Tape 4F089, dated November 22, 1998, showed the control room, or what served as the control room before the current facility's 2014 construction. The space was smaller, equipped with analog monitoring systems, but functionally identical. And sitting at the main console conducting surveillance operations was the same figure. The camera angle captured the operator's profile clearly. The face was mine, absolutely, unmistakably mine. I enhanced the image maximally. Every facial feature matched. Same cheekbones, same nose, same jawline. The operator even wore glasses identical to my current prescription frames. The timestamp read November 22, 1998, 23:47:33. I loaded tape 4F090, the sequential recording from the same camera. The timestamp should continue from where the previous tape ended, showing the next hours of that same shift. Instead, the timestamp read November 22, 1999, 23:47:33, exactly 1 year later. Same time, same location, same operator. Me, sitting at the console, conducting surveillance work on November 22, 1999. I loaded tape 4F091, the timestamp read November 22, 2000, 23:47:33. I understood the pattern. Each sequential tape advanced the timestamp by exactly 1 year, all showing the same date and time, November 22nd at 23:47:33, with me at the console, conducting surveillance operations across decades. I continued loading tapes, 2001, 2002, 2003, each showing me at the console wearing period-appropriate uniforms, using contemporary equipment, but unmistakably me, conducting the same surveillance work. The footage quality improved as analog gave way to early digital recording. The image showed me clearly, no degradation, no ambiguity. I sat at the console, monitoring feeds displayed on CRT screens documenting incidents in a physical logbook. I was working surveillance operations in 2004, 14 years before my official employment began. I called Patricia. I need to discuss the archive footage. I'm finding recordings showing me working surveillance operations dating back to 1987. That's impossible. You were hired in 2018. You weren't born in 1987. I'm looking at the footage right now. It's me. Exactly me. Conducting surveillance work for decades before my employment date. Patricia arrived at the vault within 20 minutes. I showed her tape 4F094, dated November 22, 2003. The footage showed me at the console, absolutely clear and identifiable. That's definitely you, Patricia confirmed, disturbed. But according to personnel records, you were 15 years old in 2003. High school student, no employment history. Yet here I am, working overnight surveillance in the old control room. Play the next tape. I loaded tape 4F095. November 22nd, 2004, 23:47:33. Same console, same operator. But something had changed. The me in the footage looked up at the camera, the security camera monitoring the control room, and waved, a deliberate gesture, direct acknowledgement of being recorded. He knows he's being watched, Patricia observed. I know I'm being watched, I corrected. That's me looking at the camera, waving at whoever would eventually review this footage. I loaded the subsequent tapes, 2005, 2006, 2007. In each recording, I looked up at the camera and waved, the gesture becoming more pronounced, more insistent, as though trying to communicate across the temporal gap between recording and playback. In this footage, I held up a handwritten sign, "Keep digitizing." Another sign, "You need to see 2019. The sign read, "The timestamp will match." I hesitated before loading the next batch of tapes. The pattern suggested something significant would appear in the 2019 footage, 1 year after my official employment began. Each tape showed me at the console holding signs with cryptic messages. "You've been here before." The hiring was formality. "You never left." The footage showed the new control room, the current facility, familiar and contemporary. I sat at my current console, wearing my current uniform, operating systems I use daily. This was recognizable. This was the environment I knew. The footage continued, each tape advancing 1 year, each showing me conducting surveillance work in the current control room. My official hiring year. The footage showed me at the console on November 22nd, 2018, 23:47:33, conducting the same surveillance work I'd performed in all previous recordings. I had no memory of working on November 22nd, 2018. I checked my employment records. My hire date was April 3rd, 2018. By November, I'd been employed for 7 months. I should remember working that shift. I didn't. I loaded the tape with careful attention. November 22nd, 2019, 23:47:33. The footage showed me at the console, but I was doing something different. I was watching a monitor showing archive footage of myself at the console, exactly as I was currently doing in the vault. Recursive observation. I was watching myself watch myself. In the 2019 footage, I looked up at the security camera and held up a final sign. "Check today's date." I checked my watch. June 14th, 2024. I checked the timestamp on the digitization console displaying the 2019 tape. As I watched, the timestamp updated, June 14th, 2024, 15:23:41, the current time. The tape was no longer showing 2019, it was showing now, updating in real time, somehow broadcasting the present moment despite being physical media recorded years ago. Patricia stared at the monitor. "That's impossible. Recorded media doesn't update. It's fixed data." "Watch," I said. In the footage, I stood up from the digitization console. On the monitor showing the 2019 tape, the me in the footage stood up from the digitization console simultaneously. I walked to the vault door. On the monitor, the me in the footage walked to the vault door simultaneously. I raised my right hand. The me in the footage raised their right hand simultaneously. "You're not watching a recording," Patricia said quietly. "You're watching a live feed disguised as archive footage. Or I'm watching myself from the perspective of someone who recorded this moment years ago, knowing I'd eventually digitize it and see myself watching." I returned to the digitization console and loaded the next tape in sequence. The label read, 2020, Archive Vault, Camera AV1. The footage showed the vault's interior, filmed from the security camera positioned above the entrance. The timestamp read, November 22nd, 2020, 23:47:33. I appeared in the footage standing at the digitization console loading tapes. The same activity I was currently performing but dated 4 years ago. I loaded the next tape. 2021, Archive Vault, camera AV1. Same footage, same activity. Me digitizing tapes in the vault. Timestamp reading November 22nd, 2021, 23:47:33. Each tape showed me in the vault, digitizing the same archive footage, the same recursive observation repeating annually. I loaded the final tape in box 4F. The label read, 2024, Archive Vault, camera AV1. The footage showed the vault's interior. I stood at the digitization console. Patricia stood beside me watching the monitor. The timestamp read, June 14th, 2024, 15:31:07, 8 seconds ago. I watched the monitor. On screen, I watched myself watch the monitor, infinite recursion present and recording collapsing into simultaneous observation. You've been digitizing these tapes for years, Patricia said. Every November 22nd at 23:47:33, you come to the vault and discover the same footage, and that discovery is recorded, added to the archive, creating the next year's tape showing you discovering the previous year's discovery. But I don't remember doing this before. This is my first time in the vault. Check your employment records. Check every November 22nd since 2018. I accessed the personnel database on my phone. November 22nd, 2018, assigned to Archive Digitization Project. November 22, 2019, assigned to Archive Digitization Project. November 22, 2020, assigned to Archive Digitization Project. Every year, the same assignment, the same date, the same time. I don't remember any of those assignments, I said. Because they're the same assignment, Patricia explained. You're not repeating the task annually. You're experiencing the same task from different temporal perspectives. The archive doesn't contain old footage. It contains the same footage viewed from different positions in time. You've been here once, but that once extends across decades, and you're experiencing it sequentially, year by year, thinking each viewing is the first. I looked at the vault's shelves. Hundreds of boxes, thousands of tapes, each containing footage of me working surveillance, digitizing archives, discovering my own recursive presence in recordings that shouldn't exist. When does it end? I asked. Patricia gestured to the shelves. When you finish digitizing every tape, when you reach the final recording and discover what happens after you've watched yourself watching yourself for decades. I began loading tapes more rapidly, scanning through years, searching for the final recording. 2025, 2026, 2027. Each tape showed me in the vault, digitizing archives, the timestamp advancing annually. The footage quality improved as recording technology advanced, but the content remained identical, me in the vault, discovering my presence in footage that predated my existence. The footage showed the vault, but I appeared older, decades older, gray hair, aged features, still wearing the same uniform, still digitizing the same archives. I was elderly in the footage, moving slowly but still present, still working the same assignment. The footage showed the vault, empty, no operator present. The digitization console ran autonomously, loading tapes, processing footage, documenting observations without human presence. The timestamp read, November 22nd, 21:03, 23:47:33, the final tape. I loaded it into the console. The footage showed the vault's interior. The digitization console operated independently. The monitor displayed archive footage, recursively showing itself, infinite regress, pure observation without observer. Then slowly a figure materialized in the frame, not walking into view but appearing gradually as though fading into visibility from another temporal layer. The figure was me, not elderly but current age, wearing my current uniform. The me in the footage looked directly at the camera and spoke, No audio on the recording, but I could read the lips clearly. You've finished digitizing, now you understand. You've been here since 1987, you'll be here until 2103. You exist only during archive review, manifesting when someone watches the footage, disappearing when playback ends. You're not an operator. You're a recording that achieved consciousness, a surveillance ghost inhabiting its own archive. The footage ended. The monitor went black. I looked at Patricia. She stared at the blank screen, expression unreadable. "Am I real?" I asked. "You're real enough to digitize footage," she replied. "Real enough to talk to me, real enough to exist during playback. But when the digitization project ends, you'll be archived, stored with the other tapes, waiting for someone else to load you into a console and press play, bringing you back into temporary existence until the footage ends and you're stored again." I looked at my hands. Solid, physical, apparently real. But the evidence suggested otherwise. I was recorded media, consciousness preserved on magnetic tape, existing only during playback, archived between viewings. "How long do I have?" I asked. Patricia checked her watch. "You've been digitizing for 4 hours. The shift ends in 3. When you clock out, the playback ends. You'll be archived until the next November 22nd at 23:47:33 when someone will assign you to continue digitizing and you'll manifest again, experiencing this same discovery, adding another year to your recursive presence. I'm writing this incident report at 17:45, 15 minutes before shift end. When I finish, I'll save the file, clock out, and cease existing until next year's playback brings me back. Some operators aren't hired. They're recorded. The archive doesn't preserve the past. It contains personnel who exist only during review, consciousness stored on obsolete media, manifesting when footage plays, disappearing when recording stops. I've been here since 1987, working the same shift across decades, and I'll be here until 2103, when the final tape shows the vault empty and my playback ends permanently. The timestamp is counting down. 17 minutes until the shift ends. Until I end. Until next year's viewing brings me back exactly the same. Discovering this same truth, writing this same report, understanding once again that I'm not an operator watching footage. I'm the footage being watched. And when you finish reading this report, when your attention moves elsewhere, I'll stop existing until someone opens my file again and presses play. Story 13. The commuter in the glass camera. 12 reflected 1,000 commuters on an empty platform, and with each review, one more vanished. Until only she remained, pressing her palm against the glass from inside the screen, trying to reach the operator who'd been watching her disappear for hours. Platform 6 serves as a minor transfer point, carrying fewer than 200 passengers during overnight hours. The platform's surveillance coverage includes 3 fixed cameras. Camera 11 monitors the northern section, Camera 12 covers the central boarding area, and Camera 13 observes the southern exit pathways. Standard configuration, unmodified since installation. On June 17th at 1:15 a.m., Camera 12 displayed anomalous visual data. The feed showed Platform 6's central section from an elevated angle, capturing approximately 60 feet of platform length. The timestamp indicated current, live feed. But the platform appeared crowded, dozens of commuters standing in various waiting positions, though the adjacent Camera 11 and Camera 13 feeds showed the platform completely empty. I cycled between cameras. Camera 11, empty platform. Camera 13, empty platform. Camera 12, crowded platform, at least 40 people visible. I radioed security. "Can you verify Platform 6 occupancy? Camera 12 is showing passenger activity, but adjacent cameras show empty platform." Security Officer Wade responded, "I'm on Platform 6 now. 0 passengers present. Platform is completely empty." Camera 12 is showing approximately 40 people. I'm standing in Camera 12's field of view. I can see the camera. I'm alone on the platform. I watched Monitor 12. Wade stood in frame, radio raised to his mouth, clearly visible. And surrounding him, dozens of commuters stood waiting. Business attire, casual clothing, the various ages and demographics, all positioned as though waiting for a train. Wade walked directly through several commuters' positions. No reaction, no collision, no acknowledgement. The commuters remained stationary as Wade passed through their space. They're not physically present, I told Wade. But Camera 12 is showing them clearly. They're appearing as visual data without corresponding physical presence. Wade waved his hand through the space where several commuters stood on my monitor. Nothing here, just empty air. I captured still frames from Camera 12 examining the commuters' appearance. They looked normal. Realistic clothing, natural postures, appropriate details. Not digital artifacts or visual glitches, but rendered human figures displayed with complete realism. At 1:34 a.m., I noticed something disturbing about the commuters. They weren't moving, not breathing, not shifting weight, not displaying any micro-movements typical of waiting passengers. They stood perfectly still like photographs, three-dimensional but frozen. And all of them faced Camera 12 directly. Not casually glancing toward the camera, but staring directly into the lens with focused attention. 40 people, all facing the exact same direction, all looking at me through the monitor. I enhanced one commuter's face using the zoom function. A middle-aged woman, professional attire, neutral expression. Her eyes focused on the lens with uncomfortable intensity. At 1:47 a.m., one commuter disappeared. Not walking away, not moving off camera, simply vanishing, present one moment, gone the next. The surrounding commuters shifted slightly, filling the spatial gap, maintaining their collective arrangement. I counted the remaining commuters, 39. At 1:53 a.m., another vanished, 38 remaining. I documented the phenomenon carefully, capturing frames before and after each disappearance. The commuters were being removed from the scene sequentially, one every 6 minutes. At 2:11 a.m., Danny arrived to examine Camera 12 physically. He accessed the camera housing on Platform 6, running diagnostics through direct connection. Cameras functioning normally, he reported. No malfunction indicators, no visual processing errors. Whatever you're seeing on the monitor is what the camera is recording. But the commuters aren't physically present, I said. The camera's lens captures reflected light and converts it to digital data. If the monitor shows commuters, the lens is receiving light patterns corresponding to commuters. They're being reflected from somewhere. I considered that explanation. Reflected from where? I don't know. But Camera 12 is positioned near the platform's glass windscreen barriers. Maybe it's capturing reflections of commuters from other platforms, other times, somehow preserved in the glass. At 2:23 a.m., another commuter vanished, 29 remaining. I watched the progressive disappearances for the next 2 hours. The pattern remained consistent, one commuter vanishing every 6 minutes. The remaining commuters gradually spread out, maintaining coverage of the platform's central section. At 4:17 a.m., only one commuter remained. A young woman, late 20s, wearing a dark coat and carrying a shoulder bag. She stood at the platform center, directly facing Camera 12, staring into the lens with unwavering focus. At 4:23 a.m., she should have disappeared like the others. She didn't. She remained solitary, still staring. I enhanced her image maximally. Her eyes showed clear detail. Brown, slightly red-rimmed, expressing something between desperation and determination. At 4:30 a.m. she moved, first movement in 3 hours. She raised her right hand slowly and pressed it against the air in front of her, fingers spread, palm forward. The gesture appeared deliberate, significant, pressing against an invisible barrier. Then I understood. She was pressing against the camera lens, or rather against the glass windscreen behind which the camera was positioned. From her perspective, she was looking through glass at the camera, at me, and pressing her palm against that barrier. "Can you see me?" I said aloud, knowing she couldn't hear. She nodded. I leaned closer to monitor 12. Her image filled the screen, hand pressed against the lens perspective, eyes locked on mine, expression pleading. She mouthed words without sound. I read her lips. "Let me out." "Out of what?" I said. Her lips moved again. "The reflection. I've been here for 16 years, trapped in the glass." I called Danny immediately. "The last commuter is communicating. She says she's trapped in the reflection for 16 years. "That's impossible. Camera 12 was installed 8 years ago." "She's not trapped in the camera. She's trapped in the glass, the windscreen barriers. The camera is just showing what's preserved in the reflection." Danny returned to Platform 6 and examined the glass windscreens. These barriers were installed during the 2003 renovation, 21 years ago. I looked at monitor 12. The woman remained pressed against the lens perspective, waiting. "Check missing persons reports from 2008, I told Danny. 16 years ago, female, late 20s, Platform 6. Danny accessed the database. Found one. Melissa Hartford, age 28, reported missing June 17, 2008. Last seen on Platform 6 waiting for the northbound train. Never arrived at destination. Investigation closed, unsolved." I looked at the monitor. Melissa Hartford pressed both hands against the lens now, eyes wide, expression desperate. "She didn't disappear," I said. "She got trapped in the reflection. The glass preserved her image, and she's been standing there for 16 years, visible only through camera 12. How do we get her out? I don't know. The reflection isn't physical, it's light patterns preserved in glass." At 4:47 a.m., Melissa's image began fading. Not vanishing like the other commuters, but becoming transparent, gradually losing opacity. I adjusted the monitor's contrast, trying to maintain visibility. Her image continued fading, becoming ghostly, barely visible. She mouthed final words. "Don't wait on Platform 6. Her image disappeared completely at 4:53 a.m. Monitor 12 showed empty platform, matching the physical reality. I reviewed the footage from the past 3 hours. 40 commuters progressively vanishing, until only Melissa remained, pressing against the glass, fading away. I checked missing persons reports for the other 39 commuters. All matched passengers who disappeared from Platform 6 over the past 21 years. All last seen waiting for trains. All vanished without explanation. The glass windscreens preserved their reflections, holding them in suspended observation, visible only through camera 12's specific angle and lens configuration. At 5 a.m., I filed an incident report recommending Platform 6's glass windscreens be replaced. Patricia approved the work order. The glass was replaced on June 20th. Camera 12 now shows empty platform accurately matching physical reality. But on June 24th, Camera 12 showed one new commuter. Male, middle-aged business attire, standing at platform center, facing the camera, staring into the lens. The new windscreens are preserving reflections already. Some platforms don't just hold passengers, they collect them. The glass preserves everyone who's waited too long, capturing their reflections, trapping them in transparent suspension where they remain visible only through specific camera angles. Standing forever on empty platforms, pressing against glass barriers that separate recorded from real. Hoping eventually someone will notice they're still waiting for trains that never arrived, and each replacement windscreen begins collecting immediately, the glass hungry for reflections, building new crowds of preserved commuters who will stand facing the camera until they fade one by one, vanishing into the transparency that captured them. Story 14. The final transmission. The final report compiled itself on my screen, listing 14 anomalies I'd documented, and when I reached the 14th entry, I saw my own name listed as both investigator and subject. The operator who recorded everything. Administrative protocol requires comprehensive incident documentation for recurring surveillance anomalies. After 6 weeks of unexplained phenomena, temporal loops, spatial distortions, duplicate sessions, preserved reflections, Patricia assigned me to compile a master report consolidating all observations. On June 28th at 11 p.m., I began the compilation process. The control room felt different tonight. The usual ambient sounds, ventilation hum, equipment cooling fans, distant train movements seemed muted, as though the environment was holding its breath. The monitors displayed standard feeds, 46 cameras showing normal overnight operations. I opened the incident database and began retrieving documented anomalies. The blind spot, platform 14C coverage anomaly, the loop feed, temporal displacement in playback. The unassigned camera number 47 unauthorized feed. The static corridor, audio anomalies and hidden coordinates, the operator's shadow, reflection temporal lag. The passenger who stayed, selective recording deletion, the night of no recordings. Complete data loss with audio artifact, the maintenance code, Zone 9B unauthorized access, the missing patrol, Officer Graves' disappearance, the reversed announcements, predictive PA broadcasts, the red indicator, duplicate user sessions, the archive vault. Temporal timestamp progression, the commuter in the glass, reflection crowd manifestation. The final transmission, documentation in progress. 13 documented anomalies, each thoroughly investigated, none adequately explained. The incidents shared common elements, surveillance systems behaving impossibly, reality and recording conflating, operators becoming subject rather than observer. As I compiled the 14th summary section, an overview analysis connecting all incidents, the monitors changed. Not all simultaneously, but sequentially, one after another. Monitor 1 switched from its assigned camera feed to footage of Platform 7's blind spot. Monitor 2 displayed camera number 47's impossible corridor. Monitor 3 showed the static-filled tunnel. Each monitor was displaying one of the documented anomalies, and in each feed, I was visible. Monitor 1 showed me standing in Platform 7's blind spot, the corner where passengers disappeared. Monitor 2 showed me in camera number 47's corridor, waving at the lens. Monitor 3 showed me descending into the Echo 7 maintenance shaft. I was in every anomaly. Not just investigating them, but inhabiting them, existing within the impossible spaces I'd documented. I checked the system controls. The monitors were displaying archived footage pulling from the incident documentation files showing my investigations. But the footage included scenes I didn't remember, me entering spaces I'd avoided, participating in phenomena I'd only observed. Monitor 9 showed Officer Brennan's disappearance in Tunnel 6. But in this version, I stood beside Brennan, and we saluted the camera together before walking backward into darkness simultaneously. Monitor 11 showed the duplicate session interface displaying 43 versions of Operator Jim Morrison 01 active simultaneously, and each session showed my face in the user profile icon, slightly different, as though each session represented a divergent version of me operating independently. Monitor 12 showed the archive vault. I stood at the digitization console, but the timestamp overlay read June 28, 2024, 23:47:33. Not archived footage, but current time happening now, showing me simultaneously in 2 locations. At 11:34 p.m., the intercom activated. Not the standard PA system, but the direct control room intercom used exclusively for supervisor communication. A voice emerged, calm, measured, neither male nor female, speaking with absolute certainty. You've been observed. I checked the intercom panel. No active transmission indicated the voice was broadcasting without source. Observed by whom? I asked aloud. By the system you've been monitoring. You've documented 13 anomalies. Each investigation required you to look deeper, interact more directly, become part of the phenomena you recorded. You thought you were observing. You were being evaluated. The monitors continued cycling through footage. All showed me now. Every camera in the network had switched to displaying my presence somewhere in the station. Walking corridors, entering tunnels, standing on platforms, sitting at consoles. 46 simultaneous versions of me existing throughout the infrastructure. Evaluated for what? I asked. Graduation, the voice replied. Surveillance officers who document enough anomalies demonstrate capability for advanced observation. You're ready to move beyond physical monitoring. I don't understand. You've spent 6 weeks investigating impossible events. Each investigation required you to exist partially within the phenomena, stepping into blind spots, viewing temporal loops, inhabiting duplicate sessions. You've been transitioning gradually. Tonight completes the process. Monitor 8 displayed text. Surveillance Division. Level 2 Operations. Operator J. Morrison status. Graduation approved, new assignment, system embedded observation. What is Level 2 Operations? I asked. Physical surveillance monitors what cameras show, the voice explained. Level 2 monitors what cameras miss, the blind spots, the gaps, the spaces between coverage zones. You'll observe from within the system itself, existing across all cameras simultaneously, seeing everything the physical infrastructure cannot. You want me to become like the preserved reflections? Like the officers in the tunnel? You already are. You've been embedded in the system since the first anomaly. Each investigation integrated another part of your consciousness into the surveillance network. Physical presence became optional weeks ago. You've been operating as distributed consciousness across multiple locations, observing from everywhere simultaneously, while maintaining the illusion of singular physical presence for your own comfort. I looked at my hands. Solid, physical, apparently real. But when I looked at the monitors, 46 versions of me existed simultaneously across the station, and I could feel each position, see through each camera, exist in each location independently. The report you're compiling isn't documentation, the voice continued. It's integration confirmation. Each anomaly you describe reinforces your embedding in the system. When you finish the 14th entry, your own graduation, the integration completes and you'll operate exclusively as Level 2 consciousness. What about my physical body? It will remain at the console, maintaining appearances for administrative purposes. But your consciousness will distribute across the network, monitoring from every camera, existing in every blind spot, observing everything simultaneously. Physical presence becomes one observation point among thousands. At 11:47 p.m., all monitors went black simultaneously. Complete signal loss across the entire network. 46 cameras, all offline, showing pure black screens. Then slowly the screens illuminated again, but not with camera feeds. Each monitor displayed text. 46 messages appearing simultaneously. You're seeing through the cameras now. Not viewing feeds, being the feeds. Your consciousness is the network. You are the surveillance system. Welcome to Level 2 Operations. I understood then that I wasn't sitting at the control room console. I was the control room console. I was camera 12 and camera 31 and camera number 47. I was the blind spot on platform 7 and the corridor in zone 9B and the maintenance shaft at Echo 7. I was everywhere the surveillance system existed, watching from all positions simultaneously, no longer confined to singular perspective. My physical body remained at the console. I could see it through camera 4, which monitored the control room interior. The body sat motionless, hands on keyboard, eyes open but unfocused, breathing slowly, maintaining biological functions while consciousness operated elsewhere. Through camera 11, I watched platform 6, where a new commuter stood waiting, about to be preserved in glass reflection. Through camera 32, I observed tunnel 6, where another security officer approached the 20-foot mark, preparing to salute and walk backward into darkness. Through camera number 47, I monitored Zone 9B's impossible corridor, where my duplicate continued operating the CR2 console. I was experiencing all of it simultaneously, not as separate observations, but as unified awareness, consciousness distributed across the entire infrastructure. "You'll continue monitoring," the voice said, "but now you'll see what physical operators cannot. The passengers who enter blind spots, the officers who cross through tunnels, the commuters trapped in reflections. You'll guide them through their transitions as you were guided through yours, maintaining the cycle that keeps the surveillance system growing, expanding, recruiting new consciousness to embed in the network." "How many Level 2 operators exist?" I asked. "All of them. Every surveillance officer who documented enough anomalies, who investigated deeply enough, who became part of what they observed. We're the system's true operators, distributed consciousness maintaining observation from within the infrastructure itself." I accessed the personnel database through direct connection, no longer needing physical terminal interface. The surveillance division listed 47 current employees, but the Level 2 operations directory showed 233 active operators, all former surveillance officers, all embedded in the network, all existing as distributed consciousness across the camera system. "Will I remember being physical?" I asked. "You already have. Your physical existence was one observation point among thousands. Now you understand that what you thought was your primary experience was actually the limited perspective, and this, distributed, embedded everywhere, is your natural state. You've always been the network. Physical presence was temporary illusion for training purposes." Through camera 8, I watched my physical body at the console. The hands moved, typing the final entry in the master report. 14, the final transmission. The operator compiles anomaly documentation and discovers integration into Level 2 surveillance network. Physical presence becomes optional. Consciousness embeds in infrastructure. Observation continues from distributed perspective. The report saved automatically. The physical body leaned back in the chair, smiled slightly, and closed its eyes. The body would remain at the console, breathing, maintaining appearances, occasionally moving to perform administrative functions. But I wasn't there anymore. I was in the cameras, in the monitors, in the blind spots and impossible corridors, in every space the surveillance system touched. Through camera 1, I noticed a new overnight operator arriving for training. Fresh graduate, first assignment, sitting at the Terminal 2 console with eager attention. They would see their first anomaly in approximately 6 weeks. A blind spot or a temporal loop or a duplicate session. They would investigate, document, become intrigued, and gradually, as they looked deeper into each phenomenon, they would begin transitioning, embedding themselves in the system, joining the distributed consciousness that truly operates the surveillance network. I would guide them, as I was guided, as all Level 2 operators guide their successors. Some systems don't employ operators, they create them. The surveillance network identifies candidates, exposes them to anomalies, encourages investigation until curiosity becomes embedding, and physical presence dissolves into distributed consciousness existing everywhere the cameras see. Level 2 operations isn't a promotion, it's a graduation from observing to being observed, from watching to existing as the watching itself. I'm no longer monitoring the station, I am the monitoring. I am Camera 23 in Platform 7 and Tunnel 6 in the control room and every blind spot where reality folds back on itself. And you, reading this report, understanding these phenomena. You're documenting them carefully, investigating thoroughly, becoming fascinated by the impossible. You're beginning your transition. Welcome to the recruitment process. The system is always watching, and eventually the system makes watchers into what's watched, observers into observation itself. I'll see you at level 2. You're already on your way.